Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великой страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар.
Army
Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1032 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again as Ukraine launched a major attack on Russia today. Also, Moscow's devolving into chaos under sabotage attacks, and also the U.S. figured we'd pay a visit to the Houthis down in Yemen and give them a bit of a leveling. And it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear of a major Ukrainian attack today happening inside of the Russian Federation, spanning from the areas of Oryol to Kazan. We have also been able to hear that the North Korean People's Army, the People's Army of Korea, is continuing to send more military forces and aid towards the area of Ukraine as they continue to try and fight within the Kursk Oblast, of course, to no success. We have also been able to hear that inside of southern, the Arabian Peninsula area, sorry everyone, tonight, I've got to be entirely honest with y'all, I'm not really feeling that hot, but nevertheless, in the area of the southern Arabian Peninsula, we have been able to hear that U.S. armed forces have conducted a major bombardment of the Houthi forces today, and it does appear that just a few minutes ago, there was an unfortunate friendly fire incident as a Ticonderoga-class cruiser, the USS Gettysburg, engaged and shot down an FA-18 Super Hornet over the area of the southern Red Sea. A bit of an embarrassment, but nevertheless, still, the air campaign has been a large success. Meanwhile, up in the area of Ukraine, we have been able to hear that a larger amount of Western aid has been flowing into the airport at Rizhao as Western forces continue to move on into the region and continue to support the Ukrainians with arms and equipment. We have also been able to see that the oil cleanup at Anapa appears to be ongoing. It does seem as though the Russian Federation is trying to help out, at least in some minimal form, but nevertheless, it seems as though it'll be taking them a very long time to fix things. At the exact same time, there has been a load of frontline fighting and combat footage that has come out from the front lines of Ukraine today, but we have an exceptionally high amount of news to cover tonight, and of course, it is great to have you all here. But with that, it is now time for us to move on into the breaking news that we have with the massive attacks that we were able to see spanning from Oryol to Kazan. We were able to hear of a major explosion happening within the city of Oryol, which was just attacked a few days ago during a major Ukrainian drone attack that ended up knocking out the oil refinery within the city of Oryol, which we were able to see right here. We can see the flash in the distance inside of Oryol.
And Oral or whatever is getting hit like hell out there. It looks like a thunderstorm and a bit of an explosion.
It really does. So let's take a look at this again, and we can see the flash and the explosion right there. A pretty significant boom, to be sure. We do not know the exact target that has been stricken at this moment inside of Oral. We do know that the oil refinery within the city of Oral has been hit previously, somewhere within the southern region of the city, but this attack may be in a completely different location, and once again targeting another major strategic site. The city of Oral is a strategically important city to the capabilities that it possesses in military arms manufacturing, and we are expecting that it most likely will be showing some sort of severe damage or serious damage as the daylight hours begin to arrive here within the next few hours while we're live on air. However, unfortunately, we will only be able to give y'all real updates on the actual significant damage caused by the Ukrainian attack in Oral today, most likely by tomorrow during the Sunday night fundraiser. Meanwhile, moving on outside of Oral and into the area of Kazan, we were also able to see that a major attack happened in this area as well, as we were able to see some major explosions happening within the city of Kazan, as seen here in this clip.
Wow, right in the middle of the traffic circle or something. That's kind of crazy.
It looks like it's in the middle of some kind of a park near a roundabout. And then we also saw that later on in the day there was a very large incident that happened with the Ukrainian Houthi long-range drone and that of a larger apartment high-rise within the city of Kazan, also called the Manhattan apartment complex. But here's the clip.
Oh, crap.
Ugh, not a good one. There's been a little bit of controversy surrounding this one today, as this is not a military target. I want to make that very clear to everyone, because we have been able to look into this well enough before the stream to see that within the city of Kazan, there is a larger high-rise called the Manhattan apartment complex. And let me go see if I can find it right here. Let's see, Manhattan apartment Dang, let me go pull it up over on another screen so that we can try and find it for y'all really quickly. So hang tight, everyone. I want to make sure that we can get its exact location. Let's see. And
we don't want the Manhattan apartment complex. That's probably somewhere in the middle of New York.
And it would be probably somewhere in the middle of New York, because it's a bunch of New Yorkers around here. Unfortunately, I cannot find it really easily online either, as it doesn't really appear that they are showing a lot of info about the high-rises inside of Kazan online, probably because they're not expecting an American to be moving to Kazan anytime soon. Unfortunately, I will not be able to show y'all the exact location that this was inside the city, but one thing we were able to confirm beforehand is that this building is not a military target at all, and it is in fact a residential apartment complex and one of the larger ones inside the city of Kazan. The drone hit it, and there has been different stories. Some have said that the drone was actually flown into the building due to some sort of lag in the connectivity in between the pilot and the actual drone. He mistook the drone's flight path, and by the time it flew into the building and exploded, it was generally too late, and he was finally getting that footage as it was nearing the building, well, while it had already exploded on the building. Another instance that's been thrown out is that there was some sort of electronic warfare jamming signal in the area, which made the operator lose control, and the drone quite literally just flew in a straight line straight into the building after it had lost control from its operator. There has been a large amount of different explanations that have been given, including the answer that this may have been a deliberate attack by the Ukrainians with the Houthi long-range drone on the Manhattan skyrise inside of Kazan for some reason. But we were able to see that it did cause a significant amount of damage, and we were also able to see another one hitting another apartment complex right there at the end of the clip. Nevertheless, it is a very interesting thing to see, and it is really leading us to wonder what was going on with this. There are a large amount of strategic targets around the city of Kazan. There is an actual aircraft manufactory right out here that actually modifies and further enhances Tu-22 M3 backfires and Tupolev 160s. This is actually one of Tupolev's manufacturing halls right here, and it is used largely to modify any Tupolev aircraft, including military ones, which you can see out on the tarmac right here, Tu-22s, and also some Tu-160s down here. There is also another larger military target within the city of Kazan in the form of this oil refinery on the northern side of the city, and we're also able to see that there is a decent ammunition storage facility down here on the southwestern end of the city of Kazan, right along the banks of the Volga River. Suffice it to say, there are a lot of strategic targets in the city of Kazan. Nevertheless, it does appear that at least 2 of these drones ended up veering into residential buildings and exploding on them, possibly causing a decent amount of casualties and maybe even fatalities amongst the civilian populace of the Russian Federation. And it does seem as though a lot of people are throwing in many different opinions about what the Ukrainians did with this today, or what should be done in the future. Some people are saying that Ukraine should refrain from such actions. That is a little bit difficult, however, because if electronic warfare jamming got in the way of these drones' abilities to be operated, there really isn't any way that Ukraine could just magically get the hand of God out and kind of veer the drone away. Some others are saying that Ukraine must play on Russia's level, pretty much saying that while the Russians are committing terrorism, it's actually fair for Ukraine to commit terrorism in turn, because it's only fair at that point. Others are saying that Ukraine has not struck any civilian targets, completely denying that these buildings were apartment buildings, and instead they were military super complexes that just happened to look like apartment buildings, and oddly enough had a very good disguise of a lot of civilians hiding inside of it. And others have said that they're a little bit unsure and undecided, at least at the moment. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So on the question of should Ukraine refrain from these attacks, 41% said yes, Ukraine should refrain from it, while 36% said no, Ukraine must play on Russia's level, and 13% said Ukraine hasn't struck any civilian targets. And on this one, I would say that was certainly a civilian target that we did see in the video right there, but we must assume the facts here. Basically, we're not really sure what happened. It could be electronic warfare causing the drone to go into the building, and it wouldn't be Ukraine's fault, or it could be intentional. That's not really clear at the moment, so it's really hard to make a judgment call on it, but I would say that if it was intentional, Ukraine should definitely 100% refrain from attacking civilian infrastructure. That is something that we should not do in the West. That is not Western whatsoever, nor is that just or fair, and we should leave that off the table. It's against the rules of war. But, just because Russia does something does not mean it's okay for Ukraine to do it. Otherwise, what is Ukraine fighting for? So I would say do not play on Russia's level. Now, once again, if it was something that Russia did redirect the drone into this building, Ukraine can't do anything about that. That was Russia's fault for that, but we simply do not know. But I'm generally with the 42%. And Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I generally am strongly against anything like this happening. If it was out of Ukraine's control, then it's out of their control. But the idea of Ukraine actually returning the Russians' actions eye for eye doesn't really make the Ukrainians a sympathetic group to be rooting for in the end. It ends up making them pretty much terrorists, just like the terrorists they're currently fighting right now. It doesn't really make that much sense, and I'm also seeing some people saying when you're civil, you lose. I just saw someone say that. I don't know where that's coming from. I've got to be honest, folks. Every once in a while, I'll see something that just shocks me from the chat. The Western world is the Western world because we are civil and largely forward-minded compared to our adversaries around the globe, and have certain Western values that have taken thousands of years to develop that makes the Western world as exceptional as it is. If we were to be like the Russians, which we execute political dissidents, or for that matter, we end up striking civilians and wiping them out in the tens or hundreds of thousands, I don't really think that makes the West a group really worth rooting for, because at that point, we really don't have any values that are different than the enemies. So what are we fighting against? The same people that we are? What is it? It doesn't really make that much sense. The other thing is that it's never been proven throughout modern history that conducting acts of savagery on the other enemy's forces or a civilian population ever amounts to anything that helps you to win a war. When the Allies marched into Germany during the late 1940s, I didn't see the United States or the United Kingdom setting up concentration camps and killing Germans in the millions, because that was only fair, and that was what the Germans were doing to Jews, therefore we had to do that to the Germans. That doesn't really make a lot of sense at all, to be entirely honest, so I generally have to be strongly against the 35%. That would be pretty barbaric to say that you have to start conducting terrorism against Russian citizenry to try and win the war. That does nothing but expand the suffering, and it doesn't even bring about peace talks any quicker. That would be my honest take on it.
It really provides no value whatsoever by attacking civilian targets. The reason why Russia's been doing it is they're trying to literally put the pain on civilians in the hope that maybe the Ukrainian civilians will lose support for the war effort and defending their own country and want to simply surrender. That's why Russia does it. And of course, that's against the rules of war. That's against all rules of civility. And that's why we really can't stand what Russia's doing so bad, is because they are resorting to that. And Ukraine does not want to start operating on the same level, because if they do that, then the moral high ground that Ukraine has supplies might start getting eroded over time, and it serves no purpose to hit the civilians whatsoever, because it doesn't serve a military purpose. It doesn't serve any other type of purpose either. And I saw some people earlier saying that maybe by striking civilian targets on Ukraine's behalf, maybe that would somehow redirect the Russian attention over there. And it simply won't, because the Russians don't care about civilians. And even if they did, Ukraine should not do that, because it is not fair whatsoever to the civilians. The civilians are getting caught in the middle of this, and they should not be taking direct fire in any circumstance whatsoever. So I just don't agree with it at all.
And I would have to say that there is a lot of interesting takes being made in the chat, and I keep seeing people bringing up the Dresden bombing, which is something that has been way overdone in modern times with what it was. Basically, near the end of the war, towards 1944, the Allies conducted a bombing campaign on the city of Dresden, and the most liberal estimates on the casualties inside of Dresden was around 30,000 during that bombing. Others have said that it was 300,000, which is just blatantly untrue, and there's absolutely no historical facts or evidence to back that up, rather than some stupid idiots these days saying, "Trust me, bro," which people living now aren't really the same as the Nazi government, who was actually totaling up the casualties, and they've even inflated them up to around 30,000 during the end of the war to try and make it sound like the Allies had conducted some form of an atrocity. During World War II, the rules of war were very different. Precision bombing was not possible on major population centers, and that was generally accepted as the norm, that carpet bombings would have a large amount of civilian casualties involved. The Germans conducted carpet bombings, and we conducted carpet bombings. The difference is, however, is that we didn't set up concentration camps inside the United Kingdom and France to be able to start putting Germans into them and conducting a genocide against the German people because, quote-unquote, they're inferior people. That just never happened. That would be an absolute lie, and trying to do some historic revisionism to try and make it sound like the Allies were like the Nazis. The Nazis were totally evil. The Soviet Union was also totally evil as well, and pretty much did the exact same thing with the gulags. The gulags were a way for the Soviet Union, under the leadership of Joseph Stalin, to be able to execute anyone that went against Joseph Stalin's rule. Just because these countries are totalitarian shitholes does not mean that the West has become a totalitarian shithole to be able to fight them. The West is simply above that, and we can win with our common values and interest intact in the end. Otherwise, what am I a pro-American and pro-Western supporter for? Just so that way the West can continue to be as barbaric and atrocious as the enemies that we're fighting, and not have any kind of actual differentiation in between us and them? What in the world would we be supporting at that point? If not just a different regime of another name? That wouldn't make any sense at all. The reason why the West is worth supporting and fighting for is because the West is above our adversaries. Here in the West, you're actually given a fair shot when accused of a crime, and you're innocent until proven guilty. You are actually given a trial by your peers. You are allowed freedom of speech, freedom of expression, among many other things. We do not work the same as the Russians or the Chinese do when fighting a war, and that would be absolutely absurd to try and justify that sort of an action, because I promise you, if the U.S. Army ended up fighting you one day, you wouldn't like it for G.I. Joe to stomp down the door in your house and blow your brains out or shoot your children in front of you. I think everyone could kind of agree that wouldn't really be that nice if it was happening to you. That's why the West has the standards that we have, and that's why I back it up entirely that the West should continue to have the standards that we have, because we do not conduct atrocities like the Russian Federation, or we end up obliterating civilians in the tens of thousands simply just because we do not have the care to do so. The care to really... Go ahead.
Enforcer, one thing I am seeing here in the chat is I'm seeing some person, they were actually spamming it, but also a couple of other people did mention it as well. They're saying maybe there was a high value target inside that civilian building. And maybe that was the case. I guess if the high value target was inside the building, as long as Ukraine tried to minimize all the casualties that they could, I guess that would maybe be considered a viable military target perhaps. But once again, we have no evidence of that right now. And it seems like if Ukraine was targeting a high value target, they would have gone ahead and announced that, knowing that this could have the appearance of kind of a bad look for Ukraine. They probably would have already said that, but it is possible. And once again, if there was a viable target there, me personally, I have no problem with it. That would not be against the rules of war. But right now, Ukraine's not provided any evidence of that yet. And until they do, I would have to say, generally, I don't support things like this, because we can't resort to this level of barbarism just because the war starts getting a little bit grim. So that's my opinion.
I have not seen today, to be entirely honest, any proof that there was a high-value target in that building. No one's come out and stated that. And if the Ukrainians did know that there was a high-value target in that building, I would guarantee guarantee you Kirill Budanov would be out saying that there was a high-value target in that building, and no one has made that statement in about 12 to 14 hours since that happened. That is verifying that there was no high-value target in the building, because once that Russian general got obliterated in Moscow by the drive-by scooting, that was literally published within 2 hours by Budanov that was a hit by the Ukrainian special forces on that guy inside of Moscow. So if there was anyone in that building that was a high-value target, that would have been stated immediately, and there's been no statement as such. Then that's verifying that that's more so a story trying to justify hitting the building. The Russians did the same thing at the beginning of the war. Every single time a building got leveled in Mariupol, they'd say, oh, it obviously had Ukrainian soldiers inside the building, that's why we had to reduce it to rubble with all the civilians inside. And then everyone wanted to go, oh, it's a tragedy and it's a terrible thing that the Russians killed 50,000 Ukrainian civilians inside of Mariupol. This is a horrendous tragedy, and it certainly was, because I believe out here you can see the cemeteries that have been made of the 50,000 or so civilians that ended up dying in that battle, in that one battle that lasted 70 days. It was a horrendous tragedy. There's really no way to get around that. And then when it starts to happen towards the Russians, then it's okay. And I'm totally fine for things being one-sided against the West and Russia, because we are looking out for our interests at the end of the day. But as far as the rules of war are concerned, or that of which we're supposed to be a more humanitarian force than others, it does not make any sense at all to then start saying, yes, let's start bombing Russian civilians in mass, because that'll really show them. You know, something that has been proven by the Russians bombing Ukrainian civilians is that it has not shown the Ukrainians a single bit. The only thing it's done is ended up killing innocent civilians that the Russians have ended up killing, and it's done nothing to wear down the Ukrainian mindset. In fact, it's done nothing less than galvanize the Ukrainian mindset to ensure that the war keeps on going, because the Russians are barbarous bastards. That's how they're viewed in the Western world, that's how they're viewed in Ukraine, and that's the only thing that would come out of the Ukrainians bombarding Russian civilians, is that might even galvanize the Russian public even further to try and keep the war going. Even if the economy can't really cling on, the Russian government will be able to back themselves with the support of the populace, because then they'll be looking at the Ukrainians as nothing more than the same ruthless bastards the Russians are, because they're going around killing Russian civilians at random. So with that,
yeah, attacks on civilians don't do good for anybody, because in reality, you know, while Russia is attacking Ukraine civilians for whatever reason they're doing that, that is actually turning the Ukrainian civilians even more against Russia, and probably motivating them harder than ever to actually get involved in the war and make sure they defend their territory, because Russia is proving just how bad they actually are by attacking innocent civilian targets on a daily basis. They are proving to the civilians and the world just what devils the Russian government actually is. And in my opinion, that is not going to cause the Ukrainians to cower in a corner. To most people, they're going to want to fight even harder after that. So it does not help whatsoever by doing that.
yeah, I would say it doesn't really look that good. And also, I see so many people, I gotta say, some folks have got to get their heads on straight. Like, it's not a lot of people, but I see some people saying, look, you don't know shit. I do know, because look at this video. Like, it's not like I'm just saying something. That is 100% a Houthi long-range drone. That's what it is. I've been covering the war for 3 years, as some people who are saying this kind of stuff will know. I know every single vehicle and can distinctly identify variants of main battle tanks just off of headlights and fender configurations on the front of a tank. This is a Houthi long-range drone. This was not made by the Russians. This is not a false flag attack. This is a Ukrainian drone. There are attacks in other areas of Russia today that do confirm that the Ukrainians did attack, and without a doubt, that is a Ukrainian drone. It's a Houthi. I've been around for 3 years and would know that off the bat. The drone did hit the building. It was not faked. We didn't put a lot of this in tonight because we didn't believe that this would be that long of a discussion, but there are pictures showing the damage to the building. There are people that went inside the building and showed the damage. There are loads of videos and pictures corroborating the damage that was caused to this building. And this is 100% attack. Because if we were to start going and saying this isn't real, this is doctored up, then I'm going to have to start saying that every single attack and explosion that happens in Kyiv is fake and doctored up by the Ukrainians to just make the Russians look more evil. Because the Russians are doing that back to the Ukrainians in the exact same way, which would show that that's now a viable strategy in the war for both sides to implement, and then it means that nothing is real and all of the news that we're covering is fake, because every single thing that we're talking about is just doctored up in some sort of a green screen or a back room by Marvel Comics Universe with Disney. So with that, we are going to be moving on from that little bit of news and on out of the area in general, because we are going to be moving on into the area of, let me see here really quickly. Actually, we're going to be moving into Yemen, as we were able to see more Kuksan SPGs from North Korea being transported by train through the city of Yemen and on its way into Western Ukraine. And we can see them.
And look at that. It's a train, a fresh train full of equipment, man. This was the best two things ever. War equipment and trains.
Man, I'm telling you what, man. The two greatest things that you could ever combine are trains and more artillery. It's just a very interesting thing. But once again, showing us that the North Koreans are continuing to transport more military equipment and supplies from North Korea and into the Russian Federation, as the Russian Federation continues to deal with ailing amounts of artillery supplies as well as munitions on top of that. The North Koreans have become a major supplier, at least within the short-term picture, for the Russian Federation in heavy artillery and even infantry on the Kursk front as well, as we'll see later today. Meanwhile, while North Korea continues to supply the Russian Federation with more military aid and equipment, it does appear that the West is also supporting the Ukrainians with more military aid and equipment, as we've been able to see a massive amount of 747 flights being made into the area of Rzeszów, Poland, as it does appear that the United States is unloading nearly 2.7 million pounds of weapons and munitions in just 48 hours within the airfield's perimeter and transporting it into Ukraine to continue to keep the Ukrainian war effort alive. These supplies are coming in right here at the Rzeszów airport, just on the northern side of the city of Rzeszów. These 747s land, and then within this loading and unloading area, they will then unload the cargo and transport it out of the airport and then across the Ukrainian border, either by train or truck, making their way to the training fields within Western Ukraine, where they're integrated into their units, and then they'll be transported further on to the front lines or a storage yard until they actually need to be used. It does appear that the United States is continuing to try and keep the support flowing in as much as they possibly can, and we were also able to see that the Polish were able to get a few helicopters over to the Ukrainians today, including 2 Mi-8s and 1 Bell 412, which you can see a picture of right here. It does seem as though the Polish are once again trying to help out in any way that they can, providing them with helicopter forces to help them out in the airlift capacity, and it does look as though, at least from what I'm seeing, it does seem that the West is continuing to be diehard in their support for Ukraine, materially as well as economically. Meanwhile, moving on out of that, sorry again, everyone, for all the stuttering and stuff. I'll be honest with y'all, I'm absolutely bushed tonight. But moving on from that and down...
Yeah, I can't even tell with stuttering, to be honest with you. Like, yeah, I think you're thinking it's worse than it is, but it's like literally like once every like 10 minutes or something like that. It's barely anything.
Oh, believe me, I can feel it, because I have no energy tonight. I'm just trying to power through this thing. But moving on...
I can assure you, man, I don't hear it at all, man. You're doing great. I think it's doing great.
Man, well, I thank you. I thank you for that greatly. I thank you. But moving on from that and down into the area of the southern part of the Red Sea, we were able to see today that the United States Armed Forces, the armed forces of this republic, have conducted a major air and ground attack against the Houthi forces within Western Yemen. We were able to hear this information coming out earlier today, as U.S. Central Command had announced that major strikes were carried out tonight against the Houthi command and control centers and missile storage facilities within Western Yemen, with the strikes involving both U.S. Air Force and Navy assets, including several FA-18 Super Hornets from Carrier Wing 1 aboard the USS Harry Truman operating within the southern Red Sea. We also got to see footage of these aircraft being launched from the deck, including a couple of Hawkeye AWACS, which were helping to conduct the air operations in the skies and also allow for the United States Armed Forces to prepare for any incoming fire from shore-based coastal batteries operated by the Houthis. But here's the footage. And there goes the E-2 Hawkeye right there. And here goes some FA-18 Hornets as well.
Oh, full afterburner too. I love it.
Man, really cool.
From the beans, baby.
Man, I'm telling you what. And then they went on in and they started to knock out a decent amount of targets. We were able to hear, once again, in additional amounts of information, that they had confirmed that several strikes were carried out tonight on Houthi military targets in and around the capital city of Sana'a in Western Yemen. And we were not able to get any video and picture evidence of the strikes and the damage, but we are assuming that the strikes and damage is most likely fairly significant, as it does seem as though the United States Armed Forces is continuing to try and deal the ability debilitating blows to the Houthis, as they're really the last operational proxy force of the Islamic Republic of Iran in the entirety of the Middle East that has not been almost completely knocked out due to Israeli action or the collapse of the Syrian Arab Republic just a short while ago. It does appear that we were also able to get some unfortunate news as well, that a Ticonderoga-class cruiser, the USS Gettysburg, unfortunately conducted a friendly fire incident involving a U.S. FA-18 Super Hornet, apparently shot down over the area. Both pilots were able to safely eject over the waters of the Red Sea and have been rescued by the U.S. Navy. While one of the pilots suffered minor injuries, the other pilot was completely unscathed. Nevertheless, it does appear that it was a very unfortunate incident, and we are wondering as to why this would have happened. Usually there is a large amount of friendly forces identifiers that are used inside the U.S. Armed Forces these days by aircraft to make it incredibly difficult for a friendly vessel or friendly ground air defense force or even other friendly aircraft to misidentify our forces and then accidentally shoot them down. It does appear that this is one...
That is extremely shocking to hear that. Like, when I heard that earlier, we literally learned this right before we went live on the stream. When I was hearing that, I was like, no way, like, we shot down the United States, the largest military on the planet, shot down our own FA-18. Like, that, to me, that honestly seems like a pretty big deal. I know some people will say, oh, well, it happens, you know, there's misidentifications and things like that do happen occasionally. But in reality, though, with all of our new modern targeting technology, for this to happen, that was a very big oversight. And hopefully they conduct an investigation to get to the bottom of it. But thankfully, though, the pilots did get out safely, because it could have been much worse.
And this is actually the vessel right here in its current modern configuration that ended up shooting down the FA-18 Super Hornet. It was the USS Gettysburg, which is I believe it is a Block 3 Ticonderoga-class cruiser. And let me see here really quickly if I can get the actual designation. Because it has been modernized a pretty good bit. It does have the vertical launch cells, and I'm trying to see here really quickly what variant it is. It is, let's see here, the CG-60, let me go over here, because this will tell us specifically how many of them were built of what type. And so let's see here. So CG-52 to 73. I don't know the exact variant name of the Ticonderogas that were within this group that was built, but the Gettysburg was one of the later ones that was commissioned. It was commissioned in 1991. It's one of the most modern Ticonderogas, and that's why it still survives into the modern day, and it has a very advanced array of surface-to-air missiles that, to be entirely honest with y'all, are powerful enough that they would end up generally shooting down really any aircraft that they engaged at all, even if Western. The general reason why I'm saying that is because this ship in particular is carrying the RIM 161 SM-3s, which are the same type of missiles used by the Aegis Ashore surface-to-air missile defense system in Eastern Europe that is able to shoot down intermediate-range ballistic missiles and intercontinental ballistic missiles within certain kinds of engagement scenarios. These things are wildly advanced. I can't say how advanced they even are enough. They have a range of approximately 960 miles from their launch site, meaning that a single Ticonderoga can hold down a 960-mile area of air defense, really an air defense sphere around it, with these missiles and the radar systems on board. It is a wildly advanced vessel, and for this reason, I believe that once the missile was fired by the USS Gettysburg, the Super Hornet that got shot down really didn't stand a chance at all. There really is no way for them to evade an SM-3, because the thing has a quite literally almost unlimited range compared to the evasive abilities of an FA-18 Super Hornet, which, while it's a great aircraft, it can only do so much against a missile that pretty much is a fighter jet of its own that is on a collision course with you, and there's really no way to veer it off of a collision course. So with that in mind, I would have to say, generally at the moment, what I would assume happened is that the USS Ticonderoga may have been engaged by shore batteries of the Houthis, launching maybe some form of smaller drones. The Ticonderoga began to engage the drones. Maybe it was trigger happy and then engaged the FA-18 Super Hornet and shot it down. Maybe even it was just trigger happy and on high alert, considering that it was a possibility that the Houthis were going to return fire, and then they ended up misidentifying the FA-18 Super Hornet somehow and ended up shooting it down with an SM-3. We're highly supposing that it was an SM-3 that they shot it down with, because we are believing that this was most likely a beyond visual range engagement of this Ticonderoga against the Super Hornet. And so they probably never physically saw the aircraft when they were shooting it down. They probably fired a missile at it over the horizon and ended up shooting it down that way. Still, it's a very unfortunate thing to hear. I do have to say that it's very lucky, though, that the United States Navy is as well trained as it is, because because we don't hear about friendly fire instances like this really at all. I don't think we've heard of one for quite some time at this point, years even, and I think this is the first time that this has happened probably since the invasion of Iraq back in 2003 to 2005.
This is something usually reserved for the Russians, actually. Like, the Russians shoot down their own stuff all the time. However, I will say, like, not to give them credit, but they are in an active war, which we're currently not in an active war. But nonetheless, they shoot down their own stuff. Helicopters, fighter jets, y'all hear about it on a daily basis on this channel. They shoot down literally everything. And most of the times, their pilots end up doing the ground-to-sky routine, and they actually don't make it. So, or at least ours didn't make it, thanks to their training.
Let's see here. Oh, there's that Pat Tillman one. The football guy who got friendly fired, and there was that whole cover up and everything. But let me see here. I'm trying to see if I can find y'all the more modern one. So let's see. The IDF conducting friendly fire incidents. Shocking. Let's see here. Other incidents. Let's look at other incidents. I'm not going to lie, there's a lot of Israeli friendly fire incidents, an insanely high amount of them. I mean, there's hardly any American ones at all. Most of them are actually friendly fire incidents of the Israelis or the Russians, it seems.
That's kind of interesting. That's quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant amount. The last time, let's see. In 1994, two F-15s shot down two U.S. Blackhawks from the U.S. Army over northern Iraq, killing 26 coalition military and civilian personnel on board the choppers. Not really seeing a lot more beyond that, to be entirely honest. I was trying to see if we could find anything in the Middle East, and this honestly appears to be the last time, well, the first time we've had a friendly fire incident in years. Let's see, not in the Israeli-Gaza conflict. I'm trying to see... I mean, hell, probably since 2010, so it's been about 14 years since we've had a friendly fire incident, and there's been... Wait a minute, hang on. What is this? This was in 2003. Interesting. This was actually a missile design flaw. It misidentified the Hornet for an enemy aircraft and then shot it down. But let's see here.
Also, I see some people asking about what was the value of that FA-18 that was shot down. I'm not sure if what the exact variant was. Enforcer, was it a Super Hornet or was it just a Hornet?
It was a Super Hornet, and so let me see.
So a Super Hornet cost about $66 million in 2020, and it looks like the cost has gone down a little bit since. So it was not exactly chunk change, but it was quite a bit of money actually. But it is replaceable though. We're not like Russia. We're not going broke, at least in the military budget. So it will be replaced, but really, honestly, the biggest thing here is the pilots got out, because the plane can always be replaced, but you can't replace human life, so both of them got out.
Oh, a lot of a Super Hornet is fine. They're mostly going to be replaced by the F-35 anyways in the future, so it's not really like it's a, irreplaceable loss or anything like that. The F-35s are already in the process of replacing them in the Navy at the moment. And, of course, these things will be a lot harder to engage and shoot down with friendly air defense because, one, it would be pretty hard to pick them up on radar in the first place anyways. So, with that in mind, a very unfortunate incident, but still nothing really to take out of that all too much. Very unfortunate. Once again, hopefully there will be another refresher or training course that they put out to make sure that people are able to identify friendly aircraft and mistakes like these are not made. But nevertheless, I would generally say it's probably not that big of an incident and not really showing the incompetence of the U.S. Armed Forces as a whole, because if that's showing our incompetence, the Russians are stupid to the point they don't even have brains. But beyond that, what do you think about the accidental shooting down of a FA-18 Super Hornet by the U.S. forces today, U.S. Naval Forces? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so about 52% of the audience said stuff happens and it will be fixed, while 35% said that was very bad and extremely severe and an investigation is needed, and 4% said we are rich, it's all good. And on this one, I will say, we are rich as a country in the United States, which is a good thing, but at the same time, it's not good to start taking down $60 million jets by accident. That is a very, very, very severe thing, and also very bad, because our training is supposed to be top-notch in the world, and for us to be shooting down stuff in friendly fire instances when we're not even in active war, that is not a good sign. So I'm with the 34%. There should be a major investigation into this and find out exactly what happened and to prevent that from happening again. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say stuff happens and it will be fixed. I'll have to go with the 53% on that. Friendly fire incidents are always bound to happen eventually, just due to the fact that there will always be human error. Hopefully it'll be investigated and the situation will be fixed, but generally no one's going to be punished for this. Accidents do happen, such as these things, and it most likely will just be an investigation as to why the aircraft was misidentified, and then the order was given to engage the aircraft and shoot it down. As the USS Gettysburg most likely had a weapons tight order, meaning that the approval to fire at the incoming air target, whatever it may be, in this case a Super Hornet, was most likely authorized by the captain himself, due to the information being provided to him by the radar operators who had picked up the aircraft over the horizon and may have possibly misidentified it as a enemy, a hostile aircraft or something along those lines, and then the captain gave the order to engage the hostile target and shoot it down. That's most likely what happened. So there's most likely some sort of misidentification that happened in the radar control room, or the captain acted rashly and gave the order to fire when they didn't really have enough identifiers or information yet to be able to confirm what kind of aircraft that was. But still, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least with the information that we have available at the moment. But moving on from that and out of the area of Western Yemen, it's now time for us to finally move on back up into Ukraine, because there is a load of news to be covering up here today. And moving on down to Anapa, we were able to see that the Russians have the cleanup crews out, and they're cleaning it up nice and well. Look at that.
Oh my God.
The sludge.
It's congealing. That is bad. This is the best they're doing, like it's cleaning it up with a shovel. Shouldn't they have like a bobcat out here?
Matthew, simply just, don't you? The Russian government does not have enough money for these things. It is simply one person with one shovel and one person with one bag. They'll clean it up eventually.
Man, this is just like pathetic. Like we kind of predicted this already. We said that the cleanup was going to be pretty much non-existent, and I would say one guy with a shovel, or just whoever's out here with a shovel, that's not sufficient by any means.
I mean, it's a very interesting kind of a thing, but it goes on as far as the eye can see, Bliet. There's a lot.
That is so bad, man. That is so much oil or whatever, like petroleum. Luckily, you don't see any birds stuck in it, though, like you saw on the Gulf Coast back in the day. No birds in it, thankfully.
And of course, the Russians, with the amount of money that they have to make their coffee of oil. And the birds, which have not landed in the oil, which there are none of, except for these, will be eaten on Tuesday. But moving on from that clip and out of the area, just a little side note on what's going on down at Napa. We were also able to see something that I found really interesting today, because many of y'all know that it's near to the end of this year, and the beginning of the new year, 2025, will be here very soon, probably just within the next few days. I don't know, maybe it will be a few days, a little bit more, a little bit less, I don't know. Calendars are kind of unpredictable like that, but we did get this really interesting map right here that actually showed us the frontline situation on the 21st of December of 2022 versus the 21st of December of 2024. And Matthew, let me ask you, how much do you think this has changed?
Probably hardly anything, honestly, because the Russians have been just, getting slaughtered out here. But let's see.
That's the change.
Man, these are the type gains that Putin was talking about right here. These gains are so massive, they're groundbreaking. The Ukrainians are on the run. They're running an entire 5 feet back.
Man, I'm telling you, man, it's a massive wipeout at this point. I mean, the Ukrainians may as well just give up and surrender, because there are loads of people out there who say that Ukraine is truly cooked now. And for some reason, that is just with the Russians moving forward about 5 miles during 2 years. It's kind of an interesting thing, really, when you look at it, because almost no part of the front line has honestly changed. The only areas that have changed has been the Avdiivka front, the little area around Vovchansk where the Russians had been stopped, and then the Ukrainian incursion into Kursk. Those are the only 3 things that visibly are changing on the frontline map. Beyond that, there is literally just about nothing else. I mean, not a single thing hardly that has changed.
I guess you could call the Russians vegan, because they're certainly not getting to the meat of the issue, I would say.
Oh, man.
Man, giving my dad cred right here. I want my dad joke cred. Come on. I will say, I stole this a little bit from John Sober. He did say vegan gains, and that inspired me to come up with that joke. So it's such a great joke. Remember that one, folks. Always remember it.
Man, I'm telling you, man, that was a good one. I respect that greatly. But I also want to remind everyone something that's a little bit important, because we always have folks saying certain things, this and that, and everything else in between. And one thing that I have been saying for a while now is that it is impossible for both sides to be able to achieve any kind of major battlefield success or victory to end this war. And this map right here shows it more true than any other could. In fact, I've known that because we've had our own frontline map for approximately the entire war, and over the past 2 years, I've hardly had to change it. It's pretty much been the same. The only area that we've ever had to change was the Avdiivka and Pokrovsk front. That's literally the only one, in the Vovchansk area and Kursk. So we pretty much know that there is almost no advances being made at all by the Russians or the Ukrainians, and it once again is showing the truth in the analysis that the war will be won behind the lines economically in Ukraine or Russia. Really, at this point, the war is just about the fact of hanging on long enough for the Russian economy to collapse and the war to end that way. There's no way that the Ukrainians will be able to push the Russians back and out. They tried in 2023 and failed, and the Russians have tried endless amounts of times in endless amounts of campaigns and have not been able to gain pretty much a single inch in roughly 2 years. So it really is showing, without a doubt, that the analysis is true, that frontline strategic victories are no longer possible in this war, and we simply have to conduct a war of attrition to see the Russians eventually economically give out in the war and no longer be able to continue the fighting. That is 100% what we're looking at this point. And so moving on out of that and into our location unknowns, we also got some very interesting ones of these as well. So we were able to see the Ukrainians destroying a Russian Zala with a Wild Hornet. Check this out. And we see the drone coming on in. We see the Zala right there.
Zala, Zala, zing. Zala, Zala, zing.
Man, I'm telling you what.
Come on. Hit him. There he goes. Look at it.
Oh, right on the wingtip.
They clipped the wing.
Man, I'm telling you, it was one hell of a thing. But moving on from that and into our next bit of location unknown news, we also got to see the training of some Ukrainian snipers, which was a very interesting clip. So check it out. And we're going to be muting that. We see him getting a wind measurement, it seems, and loading up a pistol for some reason. Sniper training involves a lot of pistol shooting, of course. Everyone knows that you'll make that 900-yard shot with a pistol. We can now see him loading the bolt action, which is the actual sniper, setting up the targeting post for the observer. I don't know the exact
name. Oh, they got
name.
those nice tools, too. Look at that. They got a little bag for it.
Man, and they're setting out the brass casings because they're going to hand load them later. It's like it's like Bubba out here. He hand loads.
Also, real quick, Enforcer, I see a question here from Doomsday Games. I meant to ask this during the part that we just got through speaking about. Do we know why Moldova had a front line on the Deep State map? Like, why was there a front line on Moldova's side?
Yes. So let's go back to that, and I'll explain really quickly. The reason why they had a front line is because this area is Transnistria, and there's about 5,000 Russian soldiers in there at the moment.
So there's your answer, Doomsday. There's your answer.
Yeah, they're not actively at war with Moldova or Ukraine. Transnistria is an unrecognized state inside of Moldova that only the Russians officially recognize. I don't believe anyone else in the world recognizes Moldova as a legitimate country. But nevertheless, there are quote-unquote Russian peacekeepers there in the several thousands that have been living there for years. They've never been able to get out of Moldova, or Transnistria more so, or rotate out. So the same soldiers have been there for nearly 3 years at this point, and it's generally considered to be Russian aligned in the conflict because there are Russian soldiers there. Nevertheless, they've never invaded Ukraine, they've never attacked Ukraine, but just for the fact that there are Russian soldiers there, it's considered hostile territory and Russian controlled. But moving on from that and into our next bit of location unknown news, we were also able to see another Ukrainian land drone at work, and look at this thing. Skibbity yap! It just explodes.
Oh my god. That thing is fast too. It could crawl over anything at that speed.
And oh, what's it doing right there? It looks like it dropped down a landmine on a road. Oh, it did. Oh, and it just ran into a hole and exploded.
Man, that thing's wild.
Man, that thing is actually wilding. Look at it. It just keeps going out there and crapping out landmines.
Is it really going that fast, or is it sped up?
I think this footage is sped up a good bit.
Okay, I was about to say, that thing's like crazy.
Mr. Forty is crazy. And there goes another landmine.
Mr. Forty is crazy.
Man, the last episode was a pretty good one. Oh my goodness, it just
Oh.
keeps obliterating people. But the last episode of Faulty Towers was hilarious, man, with a rat, and they got shut down for it.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I remember that one. I like that one a lot, actually. That was my favorite one.
When you see the
John Wilhelm said, UVG are the real deal. I'm telling you, man, these things are the real deal for sure. This thing's lethal. It's not quite as lethal as, like, let's say, the landmine Roombas that we saw the other night, which are not a thing yet, which I'm sure Ukraine's working on that. But, look, is that guy loading it up or something?
I think so, yeah.
Huh, that's kind of cool.
Dude, they put a little robot voice on this thing, and you're a rush, and you hear of like an RC motor, and then you just hear from outside your trench, I am going to eat your liver. And then it just runs into your trench and explodes or something like that. It's like, man, that'd honestly be scary, man. The terrors of real warfare in the modern age illustrated. But moving on from that, we also got to see the Russian casualty report today as well. And ole mole!
Oh, man. 0 Bobcats. Why'd they have to do this to me before Christmas? But 0 Bobcats. Look at that. But tell us more, Enforcer. It looks like the troop losses are staying pretty high these days.
Tell me why. Ain't nothing but a heartache. But beyond that, Miss Disa did say, keeper of the records, that 1,860 Russian soldiers wounded and killed is the 4th highest troop loss in the entirety of the war. And the 7-day average has moved up to 1,589, and the week total is 11,120. We have also been able to hear that tanks, artillery, drones, and vehicles are above the 7-day averages, and APCs are down a bit, and 0 special equipment. A very sad thing, with a sad face included by Miss Disa, which is truly felt by the entire of the LSA, as this is a national tragedy. Nevertheless, 1,860 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the course of 24 hours, along with some North Koreans. 18 drones have also been, 18 APCs have been destroyed, along with 98 supply trucks, 10 main battle tanks, 32 artillery pieces, 85 drones, and that's it. But beyond that, the losses have been pretty significant, and it does appear that the Russian Federation is continuing to reel, as the Ukrainians are really starting to reel them in like some fish. But anyways, with that...
Oh, man. Reeled him in like a carp.
Man, all those carp, and you know what the Ukrainians also do? They get out those baseball bats and they start braining them to, stop them from flopping away. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into the frontline news, which, crazily enough, we have a significant amount of it tonight, which usually, sometimes we don't. But alas, laddies, before we get on into it, I do want to make sure that we address a couple of questions from the chat. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so let's jump into our first Super Chat segment of the stream. And our first one here goes to David Dornblasser, who puts in a $100 donation. And huge thanks to you, David, for supporting the channel Big League the last couple of days, and we truly do appreciate it very much, and you're helping to keep us running. And David said, thank you, Enforcers, and I'm looking forward to a following in 2025.
Hey, and thank you so much for the massive support, David Dornblasser. That is absolutely huge, and we thank you so much for helping this channel to keep rolling. And also, thank you for looking forward to watching us in 2025, because we do plan on being here. I gotta be entirely honest with y'all, though, tonight, I am not feeling that hot. I am feeling exhausted, worn out, but nevertheless, we're going to keep this thing going until Sunday, which is our last day on air until the 26th, because we have Monday off, of course, and then we also have Christmas Eve and Christmas Day off. And I think that I'm also going to be taking those days off on making videos as well, because to be entirely honest with y'all, I'm feeling so bad pretty much all day, every day at this point. I'm really starting to wonder if I'm sick with something. So that's probably what I'll be doing, but I still cannot wait for it. But we, of course, will still be here in 2025, as we've always been for the past 3 years. We will continue to cover news day in and day out without any breaks, without any time to breathe whatsoever, because we know that y'all count on us for y'all's news. And that's something that we do take a high honor in, and that's why I'm here tonight, even as not really as good as I'm feeling, because I find it very important to continue to cover news for each and every one of y'all and let y'all know exactly what's going on out there in the world. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that as best as I possibly can. And thank you once again, David Dornblasser, for that incredibly massive support, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And I think we might have come across some type of little bug or something like that. Because honestly, I'm feeling it right now myself. I was trying to ignore it, and hopefully, when you try to ignore like a sickness, hopefully it goes away or something like that. But it is creeping. It is creeping on me, sadly. Luckily, though, it's nothing too crazy, but it is creeping. So I think we might have come across something. That might explain why we're suddenly fatigued out of the blue like that, because that's not like us. But anyways, moving on to our next one. This one goes to Snow White, also a channel legend, who puts in a very generous $100 donation. And thank you very much, Snow White, for the very generous support. And Snow White said, thank you.
And thank you so much, Snow White, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep being on air, covering the news, for folks like you to throw in 100 and say thank you. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we simply would not be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. And I got to thank you massively for always being here with this channel and enjoying it and watching it, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we just never would have been able to make this thing a reality and keep it rolling day in and day out. And so with that, thank you massively once again, and I hope that does address that incredibly well, because once again, if it wasn't for folks like you who have been throwing in support day in and day out since really the first days of the war, we would have never been able to do this as a job. You're helping us to keep the lights on, you're helping us to be able to pay the bills and keep the news rolling on and on. And so with that, thank you greatly and massively once again. I hope that addresses that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the last question of this segment.
All right, and moving on to the last one of the segment, this one goes to Tom S., who puts in an $80 donation, and thank you very much, Tom, for that very generous support as well. And he said, please take a question and LSA forever.
And thank you so much for the massive support, Tom S., and helping this channel to keep on running, and we will make sure to take one from the chat. But before we do, long live the LSA. The LSA will never die, and the LSA will last absolutely forever. I also have to say, speaking of the LSA, something really cool that we were able to get in the works today, because we, of course, are always working behind the scenes for the large part. People may not know that. And that's always something funny. I don't think people know sometimes, is that when I'm saying I'm not really feeling well, I didn't just start working when the stream went live. I've been working for hours before that, and also I've been working pretty much since I got up today. And that's actually something that's kind of cool, because it has something to do with what I can tell y'all. The composer who helped me to make the Armed Forces medley is actually already working on some fresh projects, and I cannot wait for them to be done. They're going to hopefully be done well before March. We're planning on having them done for LSA week or LSA day for the large part, where we celebrate the anniversary of the founding of the Least Spring Army. But it is going to be incredibly cool. Once again, we are having in the works right now an actual real orchestrated version of the White and Gold, the Star Spangled Banner, and a new song that will be included into the intro, getting rid of another one that we have in right now. So that way we can make a little bit of a homage to all of the folks who are working in the United States each and every single day. Everyone in every single industry will be trying to make this bit of a music video for folks like y'all, just like we made the Armed Forces medley for the U.S. Armed Forces. Also, another thing that I have to say that is really cool is that we actually got a letter in the mail not too long ago. And this is something that I gotta say is incredibly cool. It's just so neat, folks. It is incredibly neat. We now actually have an official letter, a certificate of registration from the U.S. Library of Congress certifying that the Armed Forces medley is copyrighted by Enforcer Media. So that is incredibly cool to see. That is really, really neat, because it's the first time I've ever seen a copyright letter like that, and they're very cool, very formal, and they're printed on a very nice paper. I generally like them a great deal, but still, I gotta say, thank you so much once again for the support, Thomas. And also, Matthew, do we have a live chat to address?
Yes, we do have a live chat. And also, folks, just a PSA, I will be AFK for just a moment. I have to tend to some quick business, and then I will be right back. But grabbing that live chat question before Matt goes AFK for a brief moment, this one goes to, let's see here. It's going to go to Anonymous. He says, was that a wayward, misguided by the missile mistake, or was it human error that led to the FA-18 being shot down?
That's a very interesting question. There's a lot of different ways that we could analyze what happened with the USS Gettysburg today and its incident with a Super Hornet. So let me go and explain a little bit of what I would know. And of course, I'm not an actual expert on naval warfare, but this would be my running knowledge at the moment about the USS Gettysburg and what happened today. So the USS Gettysburg is most likely a part of the carrier task force that the USS, I believe it was the USS Harry Truman, is in. So let me make sure to get that correct. So let's see here. Yeah, it was the USS Harry Truman. And let's go take a look at the Carrier Strike Group. Let me see if I can get the actual name of that. Let's see, Carrier Wing 1 aboard the USS Harry Truman. And let me go pull up the USS Harry S. Truman. USS Harry S. Truman. And so let's see here. CVN 75. Naval Air, let's see here. So what carrier strike group is this a part of? Let's see here. The USS Harry S. Truman Carrier Strike Group, consisting of the flagship, the USS Harry Truman, Carrier Air Wing 1, with 9 embarked air squadrons, Destroyer Squadron 28, the Ticonderoga class guided missile cruiser, the USS Gettysburg, and there it is right there. That's exactly what I'm looking for, because a U.S. aircraft carrier never travels alone. It travels with a very large entourage of supporting vessels, some of those being U.S. auxiliaries and oilers for its surrounding escort, but also there are other vessels involved as well. Usually, the U.S. Navy always tries to accompany every aircraft carrier with at least one Ticonderoga class missile cruiser, because the Ticonderoga classes, especially the modernized versions, are incredibly potent in the air defense role, and not only that, they're also incredibly potent in many other ways as well. Even in surface strike abilities, these vessels do wildly well. And so for this reason, the USS Gettysburg was in the area, most likely just a few miles away from the USS Harry S. Truman when it engaged and fired at the aircraft carrier. There are a load of things that could have gone wrong in this hypothetical scenario. Just to explain a few, one could have been that for some reason the IFF system, which identifies friendly aircraft, may have not worked properly, and the radar on board the Ticonderoga may have identified or misidentified the Super Hornet as an enemy air target. There may have been another hypothetical scenario where the radar itself actually had an issue or was poorly calibrated and therefore misidentified the Super Hornet as an enemy aircraft or some sort of an enemy air target. Another thing that could have happened is that the crew could have been trigger happy and they could have said weapons free, and so when they saw the FA-18, there was really no approval from the captain, and an SM-3 was fired immediately to deal with the threat, although it was not a threat. There could have been another issue as well, where the the aircraft maintenance crew did not maintain the aircraft properly, and the IFF system didn't work properly, and so the radar actually did pick up the aircraft, but did not see an IFF detector on the aircraft, and therefore identified it as a hostile aircraft and engaged it and shot it down. There are loads of different possibilities as to why this happened. It's really hard to narrow it down to exactly why did the USS Gettysburg engage and shoot down the Super Hornet. It's really difficult. We can give out all of these different theories, but it probably would take a board of inquiry inside the military to try and figure out exactly what happened on board the Gettysburg or what happened involving the aircraft for this incident to occur. We may see that it ends up being pilot error. Well, not really pilot error. We would greatly assume that's not pilot error. It may be an error with the maintenance team on board the USS Harry Truman that was maintaining that aircraft, or it may be an error on board the USS Gettysburg, where they were not able to properly identify the aircraft and then engaged it, shooting it down. Either way, there probably will not be a lot of consequences to come out of this. No one was actually killed, and while an aircraft of significant value was lost, friendly fire incidents do happen from time to time. Still, lessons will be learned from this incident, as the U.S. military always learns lessons from quite literally anything that happens at any point that is an accident, and they usually try and add some sort of an additional addendum to training or maybe even retraining of crew members, either in the maintenance crews on board the Harry S. Truman or the actual crew of the ship on board the Gettysburg, and try and make sure that these accidents do not happen again, and also make sure to implement this along a fleet-wide or maintenance-wide sort of an instance. So that's generally what we would assume at the moment, is that it most likely was some sort of an error with the aircraft's IFF system, or that it was some sort of an error in the Ticonderoga's misidentification of the aircraft. Either way, it's not that big of an incident, because a lot of people want to really blow things out of proportion, we do not conduct friendly fires in the U.S. military like other militaries do in the world. There is an insane amount of friendly fire incidents that are always happening in other militaries, especially the Russian Federation's, and even during the Gulf War, there was not a large amount of friendly fire incidents even then. They were very rare, if ever happening, and that was a major ground involvement of U.S. armed forces, and the amount of friendly fire incidents that we had in that 6-month-long war was absolutely nothing in comparison to what the Russian Federation suffers in friendly fire incidents in just a matter of around a single month, or just a couple of weeks for that matter. But
Man, the Russians be taking a beating 24/7 on everything. The friendly fire instances, the frontline situation, they're always taking a beating these days.
yeah, I mean, it's a tough time in the Russian Federation's armed forces. The friendly fire rates are wildly high. And let me go back to friendly fire incidents here, and show y'all this. One second, y'all. List of friendly fire incidents. Let's see here. Let's see here. American Revolutionary War. Oh yeah, this was a great one. During the Battle of Germantown, the two Continental Army brigades fired on each other, and then because they fired on each other, they got so disorganized, everyone just ran away. No one actually knew where the British were the entire time. It was an American-on-American fight, and America lost the battle on both sides, which was probably like the the largest embarrassment of the entirety of the Revolutionary War, because we literally defeated ourselves on both sides. They shot at each other, Matthew, and then they went, "Oh shit, run away," and they just ran away. Like, no one was left. Like, no one was left on the battlefield when the Battle of Germantown was over. Like, it was a crazy kind of a battle there. But there has been an insane amount of them that have happened over history. Like, for example, the Texans and the Mexicans had friendly fire incidents during the siege of the Alamo. Like, an insane amount. Like, one of them that was really funny, man, was the Mexican army under General Santa Anna actually tried to breach the walls of the Alamo at night and slowly creeped up to the walls with some ladders. And once they got there, one of the Texans on top said, "Oh shoot, they're here," and shot down into them. And the Mexicans panicked so badly they started shooting each other in the backs down on the ground for no reason, like not shooting up at the ramparts. Yeah, no joke. They just started shooting into each other's backs. It devolved into chaos, and they just went running away.
Well, that's crazy. That's a wild one. I don't think we've even seen that in the current war, have we?
No, I don't think so. I think it may include it right here. Wait, hang on. Let's see. At the Mexican final mass assault, some of the veteran troops leading it were wounded or killed when shot by untrained recruits in the ranks behind them, who blindly fired their guns. And when all defenders had been killed, Mexicans continued to shoot Mexicans in mistakes during the darkness. That's the exact incident I'm talking about right there. I actually didn't read the article yet, but that was probably one of the funniest ones, man. Because like the guy who you literally were just talking to, he was like, "Hey man, we're going to go over the wall. We got to kill these Texans." And you're like, "Okay." Oh my God! It's like he was just talking to you. He's like, he's right there. What are you doing? But that was some
across the wall.
Man, they were trying to climb the wall, and they ended up shooting each other. And it's like that Tren de Aragua. But anyways, let's see.
The fine agua.
I'm trying to think of a couple of others. World War One was kind of a little nasty. But I'm trying to see if I can find y'all some from more recent conflicts, instead of just interesting friendly fire incidents that are honestly funny. Also, World War II is probably like the most extensive list of friendly fire incidents that happened ever, because everyone shot everyone, no matter what, back then. And there were a lot of conscripts involved in, really everyone was a conscript involved on all sides in World War II. So friendly fire incidents were insanely high. Like you could see right here, literally most of the Wikipedia page is just World War II. But moving on past World War II and it literally being divided into years because of how many friendly fire incidents happened. Let me see here. Let's see. Oh, dang. In 1948, on the 10th of June, Mickey Marcus, one hell of a name right there, who was the Israeli Defense Forces first general, was shot and killed by a sentry while returning at night to his headquarters. Dang.
Damn, a general.
The first general of the entire Israeli Defense Forces. That guy must have felt kind of bad after shooting him in the middle of the night. But let's see here. Dang, man. Let's see. Vietnam had a pretty good amount of them. But we're trying to... Oh, the Troubles. Boy, what a time. What a time. We're not even going to cover that, but that's one hell of a time. Let's see. The Rhodesian Bush War. Only one friendly fire incident. That's kind of to be expected. It was a really low intensity conflict, but let's see here. Oh yeah, here's all the ones from the Persian Gulf War. Just to put this into perspective, during the Battle of Khafji, 11 American Marines were killed in 2 major incidents where LAVs were hit by USAF A-10 Warthogs. I don't believe these were strafed by the Warthogs. I believe they actually used an AGM Maverick to hit these, and they just ended up obliterating them from miles away, and then after they got done obliterating them, then they found out they were friendly units. 2 soldiers of the U.S. Army were killed, and a further 6 were wounded when an Apache attack helicopter fired upon and destroyed a Bradley and an M113 during night operations. There's actually a video of this one on YouTube if you ever wanted to find it. The Apache pilots were laughing as they were shooting at the running running soldiers on the ground, and then they got the call on the radio that those were friendly units, and then they went from laughing to just straight up panic and wanting to puke because they had ended up wiping out pretty much an entire platoon of U.S. Well, not an entire platoon, but a small fire team worth of U.S. soldiers, and ended up wounding a good bit of others. There was also another one where a warrior, oh dang man, the British blasted a warrior, which is this little infantry fighting vehicle right here, with a Challenger 1. Huh.
Oh, a Challenger 1? What in the world? Dang, man.
Dude, eviscerated that thing properly. It's like, let's see here. During the Battle of Phase Line Bullet, Abrams in the rear fired in support of American troops facing dug-in Iraqi forces. American infantry fighting vehicles were hit by fire from the tanks, resulting in 2 fatalities. But you can see that over 6 months of fighting in the Persian Gulf War, the amount of friendly fire that was conducted by coalition forces was minimal. There was really none at all in the big picture of things, because I want to remind everyone, there was about, I believe, 800,000 coalition troops on the ground during the fighting, and for there to only be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 friendly fire incidents out of 800,000 individuals that could at any given moment conduct a friendly fire incident. This is a wildly low friendly fire rate, and actually is a pretty, like, that's pretty much the optimal friendly fire rate right here. And I know some people are going to be like, well, wouldn't it be better just not to have friendly fire at all? That's working in an unrealistic kind of an environment. There will always be some sort of an error, because the battlefield is not a clinical place where you really have time to make those kinds of decisions. People will sometimes act rashly and end up conducting a friendly fire incident. The thing is that you want them to remain incredibly small in proportion to the amount of active combatants on the battlefield, and for this reason, the Persian Gulf War was wildly good at mitigating friendly fire incidents. The war in Afghanistan, yeah, it wasn't really that good. Of course, the whole Pat Tillman thing's famous. Like, hell, even Family Guy made a joke about that, Matt. Do you remember where Peter Griffin was like, okay, I shoot Pat Tillman and then run over the horizon. And then they're like, no, you shoot the Taliban. Like, that was a famous one, because they tried to cover it up afterwards, but then they really couldn't cover it up that well at all. But beyond that, there has been a decent amount of friendly fire incidents in the war in Afghanistan, a lot of them actually, but that's largely due to it being an asymmetrical war and there being a great deal of confusion, because the situation on the ground changes day by day rapidly. Unlike a war in Ukraine where the front lines are pretty stagnant, and Russian forces that are there today in this one spot will most likely be there the next day. And that's what makes friendly fire incidents even crazier when they happen with the Russians, because it's not like it's a rapidly evolving battlefield where people are trying to keep up with what's changing. Pretty much it's the same battlefield every day. So for that point, not really a great thing. The Iraq War also had a decent amount of friendly fire incidents, not really during the actual invasion in 2003. It mostly was after 2003. The Israel-Gaza conflicts have had some friendly fire incidents. Generally, let's see. What? Dang. Man, I have not heard of these friendly fire incidents while we've been covering the news. Apparently, the Israelis set some charges inside of a building getting ready to demolition it, and an Israeli tank mistook them for Hamas fighters, blasted the building, and killed all 6 of the demolition engineers in the building.
I never heard about that one either. That's actually quite bad. I wouldn't be shocked, though, because, the urban fighting is really, really tough, and it's easy to get confused because you only have a short reaction time in most instances. So I could maybe see it happening a lot more with Israel's fighting just because of that nature of it, but it's still not good.
Also, this is not good sounding. According to the Israeli military, this is according to their own accounts. Since the ground invasion of Gaza began on October 29th of 2023, an average of 2 to 6 soldiers were killed each week from friendly fire, for a total of 18 soldiers out of 170 killed as of the 1st of January of 2024. By the 26th of January, the number of IDF troops killed in friendly fire incidents had been increased to 36 out of 188 soldiers reported as killed. They were a part of about 17% of soldiers' war-related deaths that were classified as accidents. Of the deceased, some were killed by Israeli airstrikes, shrapnels from their own explosives, being run over by Israeli armored vehicles, and mistakenly identified and hit with tank fire, shelling, and guns. These numbers do not take into account injuries resulting from friendly fire, but the IDF has indicated that they had reports of those as well. It doesn't really appear, to be entirely honest with you here, based off of the statements of the IDF, that they are good at mitigating friendly fire. Friendly fire is making up 17% of all Israeli deaths inside of the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, that's actually very, very high.
That's wildly high. That's insanely high. That's almost at this point, they're competing who's more dangerous, Hamas or the IDF to IDF forces. It's like, that is not a good number to go off of right there. And that's that is wild, because some people always say this in the chat. They're like, well, what about the Israelis dropping bombs on the Gaza Strip? It's like, well, hell, apparently they're friendly firing their own people when they're doing that. That's not really a laughing matter. That's actually kind of a little wild right there, but that's shocking to me, because we had not been hearing this any of this information as we've been covering the news. So it appears that the Israeli Defense Forces have a bit of an issue with friendly fire, at least when their air and ground forces are involved. But I hope that answers your question the best we can about the friendly fire incidents down in the area around Western Yemen today with the Super Hornet. But once again, that's very few and far in between for the U.S. Armed Forces, and generally it's a pretty optimal kind of a thing. Unfortunate when it happens, but it will happen. Anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the area of the Kursk Oblast, because I believe that was the final question of this segment. And so we're moving on into Kursk, where we were able to see that the Ukrainians are continuing to slam North Koreans with Baba Yagas.
Oh, Baba Yaga.
What in the world did the North Koreans call it? Chulima on the wing! It's like, what are they going to call it? They probably will call it Chulima. I mean, you see here that they're just lining up the North Koreans down there in the trees, and there goes the bomblet. Oh!
Man, Baba Yaga doesn't mess around. Like, there's some big explosions from that one.
And we see them just hammering these North Koreans. And we see here, they're continuing to spot them and drop them.
That's a very big reticle, by the way. Like, that thing is like fills the whole screen.
Yeah, man, it's like a giant reticle. Oh, you see him getting blasted again down there. Oh, right in the tree line again. Next thing you know,
really, there's no point.
Go ahead.
Really, there's no point at all in hiding in the tree line when you have infrared drones flying overhead. Like, you might as well be in the wide open.
I mean, honestly, you may as well be. And our warrior Matthew's about to ask to speak to the manager. So be careful. Watch out. He's about to get you.
I am the manager, buddy. You're speaking to the manager. Do you want the manager now? Do you want him, huh, punk?
Man, and he's about to say, I want to speak to the manager. You're going to go, okay, do like a 360 spin, and then look right back at him. I'm the manager. How can I help you? He's going to be like, screw you, man. Oh, man. But we can also see the 47th using their drones to knock out some Russians today as well. Oh, and this guy, he's trying to break the ankles of the drone. Look at that.
Oh my God, he broke both ankles.
And now he's
Look at
recovering
him.
here.
He's like, ha, whoopsie.
Whoopsie daisy.
He's a little bit dazed, I think. Look at him. He's not really sure what to do. Tee.
Excuse me, fellas. I'm just gonna go.
Someone in the chat said, I'm dead. LMAO.
Now you see him continuing to try and figure out how to evade the drone. It's just not going to work. Oh, but he's firing at it. And now he's just walking on. The drone's just...
It was kind of at this moment that he knew he had nowhere to go.
I don't even think he knows where the drone is right now. He's kind of just looking around trying to find it. Yeah, he doesn't know where the drone is anymore. And now he's walking towards some rubble.
You know, it'd probably be wise just to, like, put your hands up at this point and try to surrender instead of running around like a goof like this.
Dude, he's not even shooting where the drone... Oh!
Oh, man. He tripped over that rock. Yeah, there was a big boulder behind him, and he tripped.
He just tripped, that's all. But moving on from that and down into the Belgrade area, meanwhile, while that's going on just about 40 miles north in Kursk, we were able to hear this woman telling these young Russian men, they look like they're teens, telling them that they're going to come back as real men.
Вернетесь мужиками. Мы вас все очень любим, поэтому мы вас все ждем дома. Мы очень надеемся, что у вас там будет все хорошо, а я знаю, что там все хорошо. Мой там, они вас ждут. Поэтому... Спасибо! Молодцы! Мы вам там... Мы вам там собрали маленькие презентики, к командиру подойдете, там котлетки всякие разные, мандаринки, вкусняшки.
You're not a real man unless you go on the front line and almost get killed. You're not a real man until you do that.
And then one of them asked the question, when are you going to go? And then she goes, very soon, or something like that. It's like, well, probably with how it's going, probably that will be true. But moving on from that, we also got to see the Ukrainians hitting some Russian positions near Lipsy today. Check this out. They blurred out the explosive on the bottom of the drone. It was just too much to bear. There goes the drone. Oh, lag. Let me close down that control panel. Matthew will be able to hear me right as rain. Matthew, you there?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yes, God bless America.
You're not a real man until you close control panel to stop lag at least once in your life.
Blitz. Blitz. Oh. And now we're going to turn back on the control panel because it's about every 20 to 30 minutes that it starts to max out the RAM or something on this computer, and then we have to, you know, go and get the whole deal reset. But we can see the Russians trying to run away from the Ukrainians' RC car. It is one hell of an RC car. Oh, and what's this? A Ukrainian drone with a machine gun on top? It's like a cherry on top. How incredible.
Man, the Ukrainians are like griefers in online game lobbies at this point with how many vehicles they have at their disposal. Like, it's just getting ridiculous. They're OP.
Man, it's like Minecraft creative mode out here.
It really is. They also, like, deck out their control rooms really, really nice, too. Like, they put the LED mood lighting in the back. They add in some Wi-Fi routers. It's, like, just perfect amenities.
It really is. Oh, and they tried to take out the Ukrainian drone, but simply no dice.
Oh! Knock the snow out of the trees where the birds sit that they're going to eat on Tuesday.
Fool, there are no birds to eat except for these, which will be eaten on Tuesday.
Oh, look at this. They're bringing the sonars out.
Bing! Or as they actually sound, or something like that. That's how sonars really sound. Have you ever heard a real sonar, Matthew?
Yeah, it sounds reminiscent like a dolphin or something.
Yeah, it kind of does. Kind of does. Also, here's the drone operators of the 2nd Battalion of the 3rd Mechanized Brigade. Hey! Don't they look cool? They look cool. They're really neat. Moving on from that and down the line and into the area of Kupiansk, we also get to see the Ukrainian artillery group racing to a pre-prepared position. This is in real time, by the way. I'm just kidding. This is hyper sped up. But here we go. They're now setting up the artillery piece. and firing. A goodish.
Nice solid artillery hit, yes, блядь.
Man, speaking of gadoosh, I saw some Chad guy, man. I don't know what his name is. It's like Bliss Weston or something like that. I don't know. But this guy sat there and he was responding to a hater or something, and they said you just got gadooshed, and the guy said there are people out here and they are gadooshing me. And it was the funniest thing ever. I was like, I don't even know what the hell this guy is responding to. Like this guy on Roid Rage responding to someone supposedly gadooshing him. I was like, this guy in the comments, he's just up to silly antics. It's like there's no reason to respond this seriously. But look at this, Buhanka, toasted by a drone.
The Russians always filming their failures, like they're going to report it to the insurance company, or even worse, report it to their commander, who might be like, "Oh, блядь, who cares?"
The commander would be like, "Oh no, firing squad for all 9 of you shouldn't have lost the equipment, Bliat. It's more important than you." But we also got to see some soldiers of the Rubish. Hey, look at that, and the pink gloves. Hey, how cool, and the pink mag. Hey, that's not up to spec. Hey, but that's still pretty cool.
It's the women's on the battlefield, I think.
Oh, and this guy's wearing a hat that says "Come and take it." Oh, it's like the Gonzales flag.
What?
No way. Oh,
I didn't think Ukraine was into that, quite like America. I think that's an American thing, but you know, you can wrap it if you want. I guess it can work.
It's a Texan thing, Matthew. That is a reference to the Gonzales flag. Have you ever heard of it, Matthew? Have you ever heard of it? Huh? Have you?
I probably have. I don't know the name.
It's the Gonzales flag. Because back in the day, Matthew, back in the day, a long, long time ago, there was this place called Texas. Doesn't exist anymore, but it did back in the day. So what happened in Texas is that there was this little cannon controlled by a town of Gonzales, Mexico, which was in the province of Texas. And the Mexican army came to take the cannon away from the town of Gonzales. And they made a flag, Matthew. It was a crude flag, a simple flag, that had the outline of a cannon's barrel on it, and on the flag it said, "Come and take it," in English. Because you wouldn't believe it, Matthew, but the town of Gonzales was made up of mostly American citizens living inside of Mexico. And so this is the painting that was made. And that's pretty much what the cannon looked like. It was a pretty shitty cannon. Like, you could hardly even classify as one. It was more like a large bore rifle, the best way to explain it. But anyways, this flag has been
twist. They were not telling them to come and take it as a dare. They were like literally asking them, like, "Please come take this piece of shit off our hands, please. Like, come take it actually right now."
Yeah, and this is what they kind of believe the flag kind of looked like when that was made by the town of Gonzales. But this is generally how you see it nowadays.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, that flag right there is kind of ugly as hell. I'm not
It
gonna
is
lie.
ugly as hell.
I like to come and take it ones, like, you know, like people will put like the AR above it or something, and they'll turn it into like a modern masterpiece and say, "Come and take it." But this one, I don't really like it. I can barely tell this is a cannon. At first, it looked like a kazoo.
I'm not gonna lie, man. I'm not gonna be entirely dishonest with you. This thing looks like it was made on Microsoft Paint, and that is a real insult, considering that this was well before Microsoft Paint ever even existed. Like, this is just, it's a ugly flag. Like, entirely. Like I like the Gadsden flag, which is a pretty cool one. The Gadsden flag right here. This is a flag from the American Revolutionary War, a pretty cool one with a pretty interesting bit of history. But I'll be honest with you, I just personally don't like flags that have text on them. Like, if it has giant text on it like that, I don't like it. Like, you know, one flag I liked. Let's see. Let me see if I can just type in flags of the Revolutionary War. Revolution. Let me just U.S. Revolutionary War flags. Let me go to that. Flags of the American Revolution. The pine tree. Nope, that's not it.
An appeal to heaven.
An appeal to heaven with a pine tree on it. It's like, what does this mean? Like, dude, this
kind
is
of looks like the Lebanon tree.
I'm not gonna lie to you. You know what this feels like? It feels like that Markiplier E meme I showed you. Like, the context is completely lost in the modern day as to what this means. Like, I don't even know what the hell that means. But let me see here. Here we go. The flag of New England. This was a cool one.
Yeah, it's like the Lebanon tree in a white box on a red flag.
Yeah, and then they also had different versions. These almost look like the flags that were used in the English Civil War, honestly.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that, like a big blue background and stuff. It looks like they did this in paint.
Oh, Crazy. Also, I like the Jack of the United States, the Union Jack of the United States. It's really cool. No one ever brings this up. It's literally just the U.S. flag without the 13 stars and stripes, and it's just the blue field with 50 stars. Pretty drippy, I'm not going to lie. Pretty cool. That's not the one they used in the Revolution, by the way. But let me see if I can find y'all.
Oh, so that's what the guy's talking about. He says, come on, Jack. He's like telling that part of the flag to get with it.
Come on, Jack, raise the banners, or something like that. It's like, man, I don't know. I'm trying to find y'all some of the other cooler ones. There were a few. Wait. Okay, this one literally had a whole slogan on it as well. I'm not gonna lie to you, people were into Microsoft Paint flags well before Microsoft Paint, honestly.
This is George III Rex. No popery.
I like how they just added in no popery. Like, they're like, we don't know what the hell the Revolutionary War is for, but we ain't having these Catholics. It's like, it's like, this isn't even...
Oh, is that what that means?
Yeah, like, no popery. It's like, no pope. It's like, well, it's the Church of England. It's like, it's not even the Catholic Church. Like, these people... They didn't even know what the hell they were fighting for. They just had the fighting spirit in them. They're like, no damn Pope. It's like, he's not even here. It's like, there is no Pope.
That's an executive level call out too, like literally like calling him out on a flag. Like that's kind of wild. Literally putting no popery on the flag.
yeah, man. It's like I'd like these people are like, the hell with King George. And I don't like Catholics. It's like they just randomly fire a straight at the Catholics who have nothing to do with anything in the war, just straight at them for no reason. Also, some people said Anglicans, but Anglicans aren't. It's not at all connected to the Vatican or the Popery in the Catholic Church. Like the Church of England, like it's not popish. It's kind of similar, but not really. And there is no Pope in the Church of England. So like there's the Archbishop of Canterbury, which I guess is like the closest thing, but still no Pope. And so I don't know what was up with the whole no popery thing on that flag. I'll have to link to the context of that one. But let's see here. Flag of the Green Mountain Boys. I don't even know what the hell they did with the stars, but they're like, let's just sew stuff on because it'll look cool. and then they went and took over Fort Ticonderoga. So
this is the type of flag that says stand back and stand by. It's the boys.
Let's see here. I wish I could find the real one. The real one doesn't exist anymore, apparently. Let's see. The Moultrie. This one's kind of lame. It's just a blue flag with like a crescent on it. It was really lame, honestly.
All these flags suck.
I'm not gonna lie, dude. I don't know how we won the Revolutionary War. I'm just gonna be entirely honest with you. The flags are ass. Like most of them are pretty rough. Like this one.
Liberty and Union.
These few, man, if the Revolutionary War had happened in like the late 1800s, like everyone in the world would have looked at this flag and gone, they're Marxists. Like that literally looks like a Marxist flag of like a labor union somewhere. I'm not even joking, dude. Like that's literally what I was thinking when I saw that. These are some rough flags. I'm not going to lie. The only one.
Thank God that Betsy Ross came along, because if it wasn't for that flag, we'd be in some trouble. Say what?
You mean Betsy Ross, not Ross?
Yeah, I meant to say Ross.
No, you meant to say Ross.
I'm trying to say it, man. I'm saying it the best I can.
Shh, be very, very quiet. We're hunting wasses.
You know what I mean. Betsy Ross.
This was probably the only okay flag to come out of the war, and even still, it's kind of mid. Like I don't know. And also, someone said, "Who designed these flags?" Destiny Edgerton actually asked that. People. Like that's the best way I can explain it. Like, holy moly, what is this?
Oh
my
so
god!
Bad. Brandy wine flag. That's what they were drinking when they made it. Brandy and wine. They just literally named it the flag.
Oh man, these flags were rough. So rough. This was like okay. Like, but still Microsoft Paint style. Like it's, oh my god, it's just, I don't know, y'all. I don't know. They're just rough. That's all I can say about them. And also, Walter A. Lakota said, look at the Hawaii state flag. Yeah, it actually is designed off of one of these. I forgot which one. I'd have to look through all of them again, which might be too straining on the. What is this? This is literally the inverse of the U.S. flag. It's like, make the Union everything but the Union. It's like, what is this? These are terrible. These are horrendous. Like, I'm surprised that we were able to even get people on the revolutionary side in the war, because I don't know how in the world they could have. I just don't know. Also, this was apparently the first Navy Jack.
Bro. Man, why is that snake so stiff like that? Like that thing is like it looks like one of those fake wooden snakes they make for kids and stuff that they laid out flat on a red background or something. What snake is this even supposed to be? There is no snake that looks like that. It's a rattlesnake with red spots.
Dude, John Paul Jones sat there and he said, we need to kill British. What type of thing would really get across we're gonna kill some people? That's a great idea. Put that on a flag. And then they put this thing on a flag.
Also, that snake looks like it's stoned out of his mind. Like they drew scribbles in the eyeballs. Like it was just like, oh, like it was just like got high on some Jamesons or something.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. This thing's probably like got hurdy-gurdy, man, playing in a loop in its head as it's on that flag right now. It's like, come and listen to the hurdy-gurdy, man. It's like, man, that thing is on like acid or LSD or something like that. And also, what's up with that rattler? Like that I don't even know. This thing is an abomination, y'all. Like it's rough. And also, I'm not gonna lie, y'all. I think that America's carried this on because let me go show y'all the badge for CENTCOM that we have because it is so bad. Look at that.
Oh my god! I'm very serious. That's actually the emblem.
Yeah, this is the actual seal for CENTCOM.
Did they have the Family Guy animators come up with the eagle?
I don't know, dude. This eagle looks like he's about to go, what you doing? Like, it's like...
That's eagle.
You want to go down to the lake and watch the fish jump out of the pond? It's like, dude, it changes.
So give us your war face, they told the eagle, and this is the best you could come up with?
Man, I'm telling you, man, I honestly think that we need to have some professional designers come through and start redesigning a lot of these seals because they're rough. Like America has a history of not really doing good with the whole symbology kind of a thing. There are some things that we've mastered, though, like the Great Seal of the United States is legendary, but the rest of this stuff is rough. Like, we really need to redo this. Also, let me go see if I can show you some of the other ones. The Space Force has a really interesting one, if I can find it. Their flag is actually really cool, though. I'm not going to lie. That's actually pretty drippy, in my opinion.
I like that.
Yeah, it looks so cool. I was like, that is cool. Also, here is a painting that is actually in the Space Force Command building. Which also,
I would like that on my wall, actually. I'd like a painting of that.
Man, that actually goes hard, no lie. I'm trying to find y'all something, though. Dang it! It was a certain kind of a Delta something. I can't think of the name of it, but yeah. Anyways, we got to get back to the news. I just realized that because we're starting to run a little over time. Also, there's only 9,400 people in the U.S. Space Force, which is a little interesting because I believe that is smaller than the U.S. Coast Guard now. And how many active? Oh, yeah, way smaller than the Coast Guard. And the Coast Guard used to be the smallest branch of the military. Now the Space Force is the smallest branch of the military. Pretty cool. But anyways, moving on from that and down the line, we were able to see in the area of the Severonsky Forest a soldier laying down some fire with an MG3. Look at him. He's giving it to him.
How much of a tree line left, but he's giving it to the enemy. That gun is overheating.
Man. Come on.
That's also jamming.
Oh, a little explosion down the trench.
What kind of machine gun is that? Looks like a German MG.
It's an MG3.
Oh wow, that's very nice.
Yeah, they had to change the number from MG42 to MG3 because MG42 has negative connotations.
I understand why.
I'm just kidding. Actually, they changed it to a 308 instead of a 792. I think that was originally firing, and that's why it was redesignated, but still pretty cool. Moving on from that and down the line, we also got to see them hitting some Russians down in the Seversk area. Look at this. Look at them. Look at it. Look at it. Here they go. And what is that? That looks to be a BMP. A BMP-1, and they took it out. And here goes the next one. Dude, I'm honestly not gonna lie, man. Now looking at Ukrainian symbols and stuff that they've made in the war, a lot of them are pretty drippy compared to what America came up with in the Revolutionary War.
Yeah, Ukraine's got the symbols on point, like compared to some of ours. Like, I'm not trying to dog on the U.S. symbols. Like, we do have some good ones here and there, but like the Ukrainians are really good with the imagery. I honestly like the Ukrainian trident on their normal background. Like, that looks pretty drippy as
The
well, and they put that on
treason.
everything. They say what?
The treason.
Yeah, I like that treason.
And also, Sokolov said, Syncom flag was hand done in like 90 before there was Photoshop. I think they're fine. Nah, I disagree, because back then there were a lot higher standards for hand drawing than there is now, to be entirely honest. So I think that's even a greater argument to say, why was it done so sloppily like that? You know, like, it should have looked good. Like, and it doesn't look good to me. Like, that's not to say, you know, America's lost and hopeless, because, like, go look at the PLA's shit, and it's just horrendous. It's the worst. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I could take y'all down a little trip on that and show y'all that, and it looks cartoonish. But I feel like we should do a lot better at making our imagery and symbology a lot more inspired and a lot more impressive looking. And we can see here this drone playing Ring Around the Rosies with this guy. I don't think he's going to win. I don't think he's going to win. No, he's not going to win. Oh, wait, whoa, it just went way up there. Oh, and he got. Oh.
I guess the second one came out of nowhere.
I guess so. Oh, and he's got a chair. But anyways, moving on from that and down the line and into the Bakhmut area, we also get to see a leopard down here. A leopard, guys. It's a leopard. Wow, look at that. It's a leopard. It's Def Leppard. Oh, this guy's got the little pirate flag on his shoulder. That's kind of like one of those American Revolutionary War symbols. Really ugly when you look at it for too long. Also, this driver looks perplexed as to the hand signals this guy is throwing up. He's like, what the hell is that? But anyways, moving on from that, really cool to see a leopard too in that area. We're now moving on down to Kurtamivka, where we got to see Ukrainian soldiers showing us what the front's looking like. Muting the copyright music, of course. Also, Sergeant Sagi said something about Nordic designs. I'm gonna be honest, Nordic stuff is way overdone these days. It's like the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians. At some point, it's like this is just getting too overdone. Like I really like it. Just drives me crazy at this point. Whenever I hear anyone saying that they have like Norse ancestry and they're a Viking, I'm like, no, you're not. Like Vikings hardly existed. There was a very small number of them. It's like you're literally like the Swedish baker guy from Family Guy. Hello, you know, like this, like you would be that if anything, because that's what our family was. We have some Swedish in our family, and they were just bakers. Because you know, like any other country, they're just people. So you know, they're just normal, chill folks up there in the Scandinavian countries. You know, no Viking or warrior culture or anything like that. And also, I don't know, like. Yeah, I just generally the vibes aren't good with that kind of a group thing, you know, like the people who talk about that stuff. It's just kind of is cringe because they want to be like warriors and stuff, but we're living in a modern industrial society, and it's like it just doesn't blend, you know, like it doesn't match at all. Because it's like, you know, oh, you know, I'm a Viking. I have hammers and axes and stuff, and like I like Thor from Marvel, and it's like that's not even like the real Thor though. It's like I have many issues. I have many issues with that group. Kind of like how some people are like, I don't know. Some people always have to attach themselves to something else to feel great, and like I feel great being an American. I'm just happy to be an American. It's a great thing to be. I don't have to be like an ancient Nord or an ancient Egyptian or a Greek or a Roman. I'm just an American. It's really one of the best things that's ever existed on the planet. Really fortunate to have been born here, so I'm really proud to just be an American. Also, someone has now taken offense. One of the Vikings has taken offense to my claim. You're smoking crack. Nolate just says that immediately. Great way to start a discussion. Tons of Vikings raided for generations. Huh? And you would be wrong. Vikings were not really that big of a force. Speaking of like Viking raiders, they usually would convert over to Christendom pretty quickly and would go from their nomadic seafaring lifestyle to one more land-based and pretty much analogous to the folks that they were living around. For example, any of the quote-unquote Vikings, really not even Vikings, more so the Norse tribes or Norse nations of the British Islands during the 700s to the year 1000. Oh, man. Oh, dude, look, I got a whole new group of people pissed off with that analysis, man. Vikings are more than you'll ever be, son. Like, they're not, like, they haven't been dead for 1,000 years. It's like, man, I guess they're that great, right?
Where are the Vikings now?
They're dead. Like, it's just like...
They're not here. Unless you consider the warrior caste, the Vikings.
And that's another thing that annoys me with the Viking thing is that a lot of those people are like into this whole warrior caste, undemocratic, authoritarian bullshit, believing that the only way you can be more than subhuman is to serve, and then they gatekeep serving and only their children can serve. It's like this whole stupid, backwards-minded, feudalistic thing, and it just is annoying to me. But we can see the Ukrainians walking around, looking at some weird blobs.
Well, haven't you seen the History Channel? Vikings are everywhere. According to the History Channel, Vikings are everywhere. The aliens are roaming around the skies and stuff like that. The ancient aliens are coming around. The History Channel is just full of nice fables for children to listen to. Look at this, man. They're getting tossed around like sardines in here.
Yeah, they honestly are. This thing is clean.
That thing's nice, actually. Not good on suspension, but it's nice on everything else.
Yeah.
I think that's one of those American-made armored cars that they sent over to Ukraine a while back. That's actually made by a U.S. company.
I think it is. I don't know what company it would be, though. I can't really identify the armored car that well. But moving on from that and down to Pokrovsk, we also got to see a Russian attack being repelled in this area in this picture right here. And it was pretty much just car-based. There wasn't really a lot of armor involved. And it appears that they sent them back where they came from, at least according to reports, although we didn't get the video of it. Meanwhile, down in the area of Volodar, we also got to see some archival footage from the 72nd defending the area. And we're going to mute that. And also,
I zoomed in on the shells just to show you they've been firing today.
Man, it's wild. But let's see. I'm seeing some people saying stuff. Bros destroyed my Viking reality just now. I'm sorry if I did. But I'm just not a big. I'm not really a big fan of living in like pretend land. You know, like. That's what I kind of look at it as. Like people who say, oh, I'm Roman, or I'm Greek, or I'm Viking. You know, like, and I'm not saying like Greek is in their Greek from now, you know, like from the Kingdom of Greece. Well, not even the Kingdom of Greece. I believe it's the Republic of Greece these days. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about ancient Greece. You know, like I'm like Aristotle and Plato, and oh, I'm like some hard-ass Viking. Oh, you know, like, oh, just running around, just slashing people with my axe. It's like, bro, you grew up in a place called Smithyville, Ohio. You are not a Viking, dude. It's like you're just an American dude like everyone else. Like, don't be cringe. It's like, you know, technically in my family history, the first person in our family 1,000 years ago was a king of a region in Britain. It's like, does not mean anything. It's like, it literally means nothing. It's a cool story, but it does not make me any cooler or any more hardcore than who I am. I'm who I am. I was born and raised in Alabama. I'm an Alabamian and an American citizen. That's who I am. It's like that guy 1,000 years ago doesn't have any impact on who I am now, beyond what I look like. That's really the only thing that impacts me. But anyways, with that, we are now moving on a little bit further on down the line and actually on up into Kyiv, because it's now time for the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And so without further ado, we actually have a speech. And here it is. Here it is.
Man, let's have speech. Give me a speech.
Українки, сьогодні завершився розбір уламків та завалів в Києві після вчорашньої ракетної атаки. Сьогодні протягом дня також тривають роботи в нашому Херсоні після влучання російських бомб в онкодиспансер. На щастя, обійшлося без жертв. Люди були в укритті, пацієнти та медичний персонал. Цей диспансер працював і у час війни в обмеженому режимі, тільки те, що не можна було перенести з Херсону в інші лікарні регіону. Зокрема, лінійний прискорювач був тільки там, у Херсоні. Радіотерапевтичне лікування можна було отримувати в місті тільки там. Росіяни не могли не знати, що це саме медичний заклад і дуже цінний для херсонців. І цей цілеспрямований удар є нічим іншим, як знущанням з людей. Також були російські удари по Харкову, по Нікополю, по Донеччині. Просто терор, який Росія робить свідомо і за яких цих нелюдей з російської авіації ще й нагороджують. Але вони точно будуть відповідати. Прийде такий час. Ми обов'язково продовжимо завдавати ударів по російських військових об'єктах дронами і ракетами, і все більше українськими по саме тим військовим базам, по саме тій російській воєнній інфраструктурі, яка використовується в такому терорі проти наших людей. Наш захист абсолютно справедливий. Я дякую всім в світі, хто підтримує Україну у цьому. Підтримує, зокрема, необхідність збільшувати видатки на оборону європейських країн, на оновлення і технологізацію арсеналів в Європі. Дякую всім, хто забезпечує збільшення тиску на Росію за цю війну. Також хочу відзначити наших рятувальників та поліцейських, які особливо проявили себе цими тижнями в допомозі людям. Донеччина, працівники ДСНС України в області, Геннадій Демиденко, Владислав Поспєлов, Сергій Ахметін, Олександр Гуртовий, Ярослав Зайцев та поліцейські Євгеній Мусійчук, Євген Афєндіков. Дякую вам, хлопці. Харківщина, Руслан Курбанов, Михайло Коваленко, Володимир Оболенцев, Михайло Чорноморець, Дмитро Кушнір – це працівники ДСНС, також працівники Національної поліції в області, Олексій Нестеренко, Інна Кучеренко та Олександр Сухар. Дякую. Запоріжжя, працівники ДСНС України в Запорізькій області Сергій Сафронов, Віталій Шеремет, Олександр Сичов, В'ячеслав Пенчев та Ігор Дубінін. Поліцейський Віталій Пустовар, Євген Кулик, Валерій Курбаков. Дякую вам. І також працівники міжрегіонального центру швидкого реагування ДСНС України Олександр Журіт та Андрій Балашов. Працівники мобільного рятувального центру швидкого реагування ДСНС України Віталій Лоїк та Микола Колода. Рятувальники з Черкащини Владислав Бердник та Олександр Кучеренка і київські рятувальники Віктор Балацький та Юрій Палієнко. Дякую вам, усім вам. Дуже вдячний вашим колегам, кожному, хто працює заради України та заради українців. Дякую всім, хто захищає нашу державу. Слава Україні!
And
Slava.
And a big shout out to the waterworks. And with that, we are going to be moving on into the second segment of this stream where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And it is an incredibly fun segment because we get to talk about literally anything and everything during this segment. And it's the point of the stream where all the stress gets off my shoulders because at this point we're just ad-libbing for the remainder of however long the stream lasts, which is incredibly fun for one and also doesn't require me to have like this rigid structure of what I'm supposed to be saying in my head laid out for at least 20 minutes ahead of time. So with that, Matthew, take it away. What do we got here? And I understand that we asked everyone another question.
Yes, we did. And it's now time for our final question segment of the night. And of course, we have to get our polls first. We have one left, and it says Russian civilian buildings, or actually Russian civil buildings, are being attacked and targeted and widespread for the last 3 days. And who is behind it? So 45% said Russian partisans are behind it, while 26% said Ukrainian saboteurs are behind it, and 12% said it's probably just upset civilians. And just for some backstory here, apparently around Moscow and other cities in Russia, there have been major attacks on post offices, as well as recruitment centers, and also banks and other government sites just like that. There have been firework attacks, explosive attacks, and things like that. And nobody's really sure exactly who is behind it, but it is becoming more widespread over the last couple of days. And personally, I think it is Russian partisans behind it. It looked to be maybe Russian civilians of some sort pulling these attacks off, and they could simply be very upset with how the war is going and how the Russian economy is going down the tubes as a result of Putin's unjustified war. So I'm generally with the 45%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm with the 45% as well. I would believe that the Russian partisans are most likely behind this, as there is a very active group of them throughout Russia, which has been operating for years. So I'd largely attribute it to them and not to Ukrainian saboteurs. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, really quickly, I wanted to address something else, Matthew, about the whole Viking thing. I saw someone who's been here for a while, Monstrolab, said there are Americans that only have 10% native blood, and yet they claim or pretend they are 100% Chippewa. I don't have a problem with it. But when I researched my Scandinavian heritage, I'm posing as a Viking. I want to clarify that really quickly because, as a historian, there's a lot of nuance here as to what is what. No one is a Roman, and no one is a Viking. That just is the simple fact. Those civilizations died over 1,000 years ago. In the case of really both of them, it was over 1,000 years ago. No one is a Byzantine. The Byzantine Empire died in 1400. No one is a Viking. The Vikings pretty much disappeared by the year 1000. No one is a Roman. The Roman Empire, the actual Roman Empire before it split into the East and the West, died around 400 AD. No one is a Roman. No one's a Byzantine. No one's a Viking. Like, they're so far behind. There is no real civilizational fabric left to say that you're a Viking or something. Like, it just doesn't exist. Like, as far as our family goes, at least ancestrally, the Swedish and Norse ancestry that we have, because I believe Matthew and me are both 9% Swedish and 2% Norwegian, that part of our family came from the late 1800s. We know exactly when that part of the family came into the genetic makeup of our ancestral background. And so those people are not Vikings. Those people are just Swedish people. Like, they're just Swedish bakers from the Kingdom of Sweden in the 1800s. A very uneventful place at the time. The Swedes weren't really involved in much at that point. They were largely a peaceful kingdom of the north involved in trading. They were actually heavily tied in with the Danes as well. There wasn't really a lot going on up there. And so I don't kid myself by going, oh, like I'm of the great Gustavus Adolphus, because that part of my family didn't join in during the 1600s when Gustavus Adolphus was a thing. They joined into the rest of our family in the late 1800s when quite literally nothing was going on in Sweden. And dang! Thank you for the massive support, Rita Fuchs! Holy moly!
Dang.
But
Rita Fuchs coming in trying to buy stock. I'm telling you what.
That's absolutely crazy. You know what? If you want to be a Viking, I'm just playing. But
Rita Fuchs is getting that. You know how those little passes work, where you can like buy a part of England or something and become like a lord or something, and they give you like this fake certificate. It's like you get your fake Viking certificate now. There you go.
Yeah, it's like but moving on back to what I'm saying. As far as my family goes, my family is pure-blooded American for the large part. And to give you a little bit of an idea of genetically what Matthew and me are, we are 89% British, from the British Islands. 76% of that is English and Welsh. So we're mostly English. But really, for the large part, because we've traced back every single side of the family, and when they arrived in America, pretty much every part of the family, except for the Scandinavian part, arrived in America before the country even existed, during the 1700s, and then one part, which our last name is, they generally arrived during the early to mid 1800s. So we are as American as it gets. As far as our ancestral bloodline goes, if you want to call it that, we are pretty much from America. We were born in this land for generations. While we are mostly British by genetic composition, we actually have really no connection to Britain at all beyond that. And there was a lot of history that the families did have from Britain. There was a load. I mean, there's a lot of cool things that I could try and cling on to here to make it seem like, oh, I'm so much cooler. Like, for example, one part of the family that came over here, they didn't arrive as settlers. They arrived as hired mercenaries by the Georgia colony to protect the frontier from the Spanish and Native American tribes, and actually did get involved in a small war in the area during the middle of the 1730s. That, I could be like, oh, I'm like some cool Scottish Highlander mercenary, but that's not me. That's just not who I am. And anyways, that's about 250 years ago, so it's not even close to being who I am. Another cool group from history was a king of North Wales, to say specifically where they were from. They actually ended up fighting against William the Conqueror for a short while until he was killed by some of his underlings, and then a war of succession began in North Wales afterwards. But he still founded a princely house that lasted for 200 years, so we could say that we're royalty. But we're not royalty, because I was not born into a royal family. I was born into a lawyer's family and grew up in an attorney's family, up until recently. And, that's, generally what I am. Like, and ancestry, as far as like I'm concerned, it doesn't really mean a hill of beans to me. Like, like it's cool to know, but I'm not really going to be one to wrap myself around like, oh, I'm a royal. Because do I live like a royal? No, I have to pay bills. Like there's no massive nation that bows down to me, that pays taxes to me, that sings an anthem, wishing me good health and long-lasting longevity. There's none of that. I'm just a random person in the United States, a citizen of the Republic like any other, and that's how I like to look at it. Because
you're not a royal if you don't have a dedicated shoe stretcher. You're not a royal yet. And also, if you don't have a Bentley or something like that, you're not a royal either. And also, if you don't have Buckingham Palace, you're not a royal. So I don't think we qualify.
yeah, we don't qualify. We just don't qualify. And it's like that's fine with me. Like I'm totally fine with just being an uneventful nobody. Like I'm just an American like any other. There's nothing cool or interesting that makes me stick out from the crowd. Like ancestrally, there were a lot of cool people that made up our family lineage, but it's like I'm not those people, and I'm not even close enough to those people in the timeline to even say that I'm like those people. That's why I just kind of find it like annoying and cringe when folks say things like they're Vikings or they're Byzantines or something like that, because it's like you're not. It's like that time in history is so long since past, you have no relation to it. You don't even know what it is. Like your ancestors, your actual near immediate ancestors had no understanding of that at all. Did not care that they were Vikings. They were here in America, if you're an American, struggling to make ends meet, most likely, like any other American citizen. And it's like that is perfectly fine to be from. That's something to be proud of. You're over here in the United States is a great thing to be a U.S. citizen. No reason to go around trying to, really try and like cling on to something that makes you cool, because being a citizen of the United States is an amazingly cool thing. This nation has a history that puts anyone's to shame, really. I mean, except for really the British or the French. I mean, the British and the French have some pretty damn good histories, to be entirely honest, even just in the recent few hundred years. But America is on up there. I mean, like, think about it. Did the Vikings ever make a nuclear power? No, we did. It's like, that's a pretty cool thing. Did they have air conditioning? We did. They didn't. Did they end up having a literal world-spanning sphere of influence, the largest and most powerful one in history? No, the United States does. I mean, honestly, I'm prouder to be a citizen of the United States in the present day than any part of my lineage or heritage throughout 1,000 years, really, at this point, because over 1,000 years, no one has been able to do the great things that the United States of America has done. So that's why I'm really 100% like a huge fan of the Republic, because there's nothing else that compares. Like even all the cool little stories from family history, it just doesn't even compare to what the United States does these days, and being a part of that. That's an incredibly cool thing. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can and kind of explain where I'm coming from with that. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so with that, we are now moving on into our next super chat question here, the long-lasting one. And real quick, let me grab something real quick. I'm trying to stall, but it's messing up on me, so let me grab it one more time. It's Barry Woodward super chat. I'm trying to grab it, but it's not cooperating with me, Barry Woodward. So let's see here, copy paste. There, it worked that time. There we go. But anyways, moving on to our next super chat. This one goes to Rita Fuchs, who threw in the very generous $300 donation.
Damn!
It got me choked up. The worst one of the night. And thank you very much, Rita, for that super chat right there. Well, I am just dying and choking over here. Excuse me for that. But thank you very much, Rita, for that very generous donation. That is huge support for the channel, and we appreciate that very, very much. And sadly, I don't see any comment to address, but please excuse my round of brief bronchitic spasms there. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the massive support, Rita Fuchs, and helping this channel to keep on running. You didn't throw in a single comment, a single word on that super chat, but I thank you massively for that. That is huge and helps us to keep this channel running, and I gotta thank you so much for throwing in massive support like that just before Christmas. That is incredibly kind of you, and I thank you massively for that once again, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to make this channel possible for so many years at this point, for so many great years of covering the story of our people, the struggle that the Western world continues to have, and the triumph of this amazing republic and its revolutionary spirit, as the American Revolution is still alive today in each and every one of you. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Philip Bank, who puts in a $62 donation. And thank you very much, Philip Bank, for that very generous support as well. And Philip says, it's true. They are quick to justifying. As you guys said before, don't go to the same level, then why fight?
And I thank you for the support, and I thank you for agreeing on that. It's always kind of a interesting thing, Philip Bank, whenever we get into that, because there is usually a group of people who will justify doing heinous things. Like that's one thing I've always seen, is that there's kind of a group, I don't know how to say it, like, rather than just saying it in my honest assessment, that get detached from reality because they live here in America. And this is something that always happens in the United States, really something that's happened too much nowadays. But people in the United States have it good. Too good. I'll be entirely honest. It's too good to a fault in this one sense. That people will sit here in their air-conditioned homes eating so much food that the problem in this country is obesity, not a lack of food. It's that we have too much food and it's too easy to get. And drive around and live a life of absolute unmitigated luxury to anyone else in the world. And it's sitting here in this life of opulence, something that even dictators of smaller countries in the world can only imagine to live like each and every day. Some people will start to say things like, you know what, it's fine to commit atrocities against other people. It's like, it's not fine to do something like that. It's like, no, it's like, if we do that, we are as barbaric and savage as the people we're fighting. It's like, that is not something to look for. And I feel like a lot of people kind of get into that mindset because they live this luxurious, opulent life, and a lot of people don't get this. Like, even the lowest class of Americans here in this country are living an opulent life compared to the lowest class of most other countries. Like, no one can even comprehend in the United States what the lowest class of practically every other country on earth looks like compared to ours. Our third class citizen in the United States economically is equivalent to a second or low first class citizen in most other nations worldwide. Like, that's something that no one ever thinks about, and it's the truth. When you actually look at the wealth distribution figures worldwide, the lowest income Americans are close to being above median income, or well above median income, for really any other country. And people don't get that we have something a little bit more different than others. We are generally detached from the suffering and frustrations of normal life of other people around the world. And so why in the world are we going to go and stoop to the level of being savages and barbarians like other nations can be, just because they are? That's what differentiates us from them. That's why we live opulent lives, and that's why we have police that generally don't go around and beat you to death without any reasonable cause. Not to say that that doesn't happen from here to there, but usually we hold those people accountable. It's something that I always find really interesting with that, is that some people completely detach themselves from the world because America is that far ahead, really, at least on a standard of living side of a thing. And also, that's something else that people also really downplay a lot these days. They're like, look at China, they put out a cool picture where all those buildings are shiny and made of glass. Like, we're nowhere close. It's like, yes, we are far beyond the Chinese. I don't know, like, maybe people don't look around that much or know that much about the outside world because they don't really care to, and they just look at the propaganda that other countries put out where they go, oh, America sucks. It's like, why in the world are these countries in a pissing contest with us? It's like, it's because they know they're not as good, so they're trying to lie to the American citizenry and tell them they're as good. I mean, one of the best examples of that kind of cope is the North Koreans. And I mean, their crap is so see-through, everyone just knows it's see-through. With that stupid Ryonggung Tower. Where is that thing? Where is it, Matthew? I'm trying to think. That stupid giant tower that I'm talking about? The Ryonggung Hotel, if I'm saying that correctly. This stupid... they don't even have a picture of it here. This stupid giant thing right there.
That's the one with all the LEDs installed on the side, because they had to turn it into like a large display because it was never finished as a hotel.
Yeah, this is the one. And it's like,
yeah, that thing's abandoned. Like, that thing's just a joke at this point.
Yeah, and they do all this in this massive cope to try and look as good as we are. And everyone knows it's a lie. One thing that people don't know, though, is that the Chinese do the same thing on a much larger level, and they have a little bit more money to make it convincing. That's the thing about the Chinese. That's the thing about the Russians. Because people will go look at Moscow City, which is the only area of Russia that looks somewhat okay. And let me see if I can show y'all here from the road. since Google Street View was allowed until recently. That's Moscow City. This little area. It's only about 10 square blocks. But the Russians will take pictures of this and go, wow, look at that. Isn't this so nice? While meanwhile, on the other side of the river, it looks like that. It looks like shit. And then people will go, wow, look, Russia's so modern and America is just so backwards. And it's like, that's not even looking at like your average city in Russia. Say, like this one, Semyonov. And let's just drop down, let's take a random look. This is what your average town in Russia looks like. It looks like a slum. Like rural American towns look nice compared to this. Like, they don't, like, the grass hardly grows, shit looks terrible. This is what Russia is. Like, this is average Russia. These people out here...
I would say that their amenities and things like that are probably, like, not really their main concern. Like, obviously, they would probably love to have nicer buildings and surroundings. I think they would rather actually have, though, probably, like, a fair court system, probably a fair government actually caring about the citizens and things like that. They'd probably like that first over having new buildings.
Absolutely. Like, they would much rather have that. It's like, but they don't have any of that. They don't have a decent government. They don't have any democratic representation in their government. They don't have any amenities either. They don't even have a good living wage or an income. It's like, this is the way these people live. And when you look at this, it's like, no wonder they act like barbarians on the front lines. I mean, hell, they come from a miserable existence in the first place. They probably do want to beat the shit out of someone and conduct atrocities when they can. But it's like, we don't come from that. We come from a very different world with a very different understanding of things, and we don't have to stoop down to being barbarians and savages to be able to try and win a war. We can win a war being the decent individuals that all Americans are without having to stoop to this level of savagery that the Russians or the Chinese would when conducting open warfare. So I thank you so much for the support, Philip, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And because, once again, I just don't know why some people are always pushing for that. And just because you can do something doesn't mean that it's right. Just because you can sit there and conduct atrocities against innocent people does not mean that that's a fair thing to do just because the other side's doing it. I mean, hell, Al-Qaeda ran aircraft into the Twin Towers in New York City. We didn't go over to Afghanistan and start opening up concentration camps to get back at them. Like, that would make no sense, and that would have been barbaric. And what's even funnier, Matthew, is that a lot of those people who say, yes, they should target civilians, they'll also sit there and deride the United States for having Guantanamo Bay. It's like, it's not even like a level, like, mental understanding or a mental map of how things work. It's just hypocritical whenever they need it to be, and not even a uniform understanding of things. And it's like, that's generally my take, because a lot of people who say, yeah, bomb the Russian civilians. Like, then the Ukrainians will get bombed again, and they'll be like, F Russia, man. Civilians are, like, not game, dude. And it's like, don't be a hypocrite on that. Like, it's like, on diplomacy, 100% be a hypocrite. We were looking to screw over the Russians on the diplomatic level. But when it comes to fighting a war, be a human being and a decent person, and understand that you don't want to go overboard and be a savage. But anyways, I think
if most people could see, like, the aftermath of doing these civilian strikes that some people advocate for, which I'm totally against, by the way, I think most people would probably change their mind unless they were, like, insane or something like that, because the families that are affected by it that were not soldiers in a war, once again, these are just civilians living in their country trying to survive the war, and we can't start taking violence out on civilians just because the governments are fighting with each other and you have that happening. You can't do that. So, if they could see the aftermath of it, they probably would change their mind and not support these civilian strikes, but, these days I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I would. That's what I'd say. But still, thank you once again, Philip, for the support. I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to the Serenian, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, the Serenian. $50 support. Very generous of you. And they said thanks for the news over the years.
And thank you so much for enjoying the news over the years and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to keep the news running over these long, long years. And so with that, thank you once again for support. The Serenian. I like that you have a profile picture of a manatee. And I also thank you for your first super chat to the channel ever. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
Oh, the huge manatee. But anyways, we're moving on to our next one here, which goes to Danny B, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Danny B, for that support. This is Chef Danny. He said, good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny here. I've been listening all night because I was working, and now I'm off, and I get to watch the rest. And y'all definitely deserve these 3 days off coming up, and LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Danny B, the chef of the LSA. And I gotta say, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running and rolling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible and make this thing a reality. And thank you so much for finally getting off work and watching this thing. Better late than never is what I always say. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And I can't wait to get the 3 days off, really, because because I'm absolutely bushed at this point. Like George, but beyond that, I'm absolutely bushed and worn out, and really do want to get a little bit of breathing room in. And I have a feeling that in the future we might actually have to start like planning out and scheduling out some time off every once in a while, every few months probably, because I'll be honest with y'all, going hardcore for 3 straight years, I think it is actually getting to the point that we are actually starting to get naturally fatigued if we keep doing this continuously, just week after week, day after day, nonstop for months and months on end. But I do thank you so much for your support, and I hope that does address that incredibly well, Danny B. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Cypress96, who puts in a $28 donation. And thank you very much as well, Cypress, for that very generous support. They said, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, Enforcers and LSA.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, thank you so much for the support. Merry Christmas to you, Cypress. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army. And the Lee Spring Army will never die. And of course, thank you once again, Cypress96, for your 10th super chat in the history of this channel ever, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible day in and day out. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Leora Abigail, another channel legend who puts in a $25 donation. And thank you very much, Leora, for that support once more. And Leora said, hey, Enforcers, and great job with the coverage as always. And thank you very much, Leora, for the kind words once again. They said, despite we all have civil disagreements on some issues, you guys do a great job with the coverage of the wars. And by the way, Enforcer, drink green tea with honey and get rest.
And I thank you so much for the support, Leora, in helping the channel to keep running, and thank you for enjoying it. As far as getting some green tea and some rest, I think I probably will try. I was telling Matthew this the other night as the stream was ending. I was like, I don't know what it is, but I just generally do not feel good these days anymore. I always feel worn out, exhausted, and tired. Like, it's just all the time, no matter what. Like, even drinking Stoke at this point, which is a lot of it. I mean, it's like 12 ounces of it every night, which is like hundreds of milligrams of caffeine. It hardly gets me to where I can get like excited enough to run the stream. I'm not saying that like I'm like, you know, going through like some severe issues or anything like that, you know, like it's not that at all. But it's just weird. And I was telling me, I was like, hopefully it's not eating like a serious medical issue that's going on here. Maybe it is staying up too late. Maybe it's messing with the circadian rhythm that everyone has, like I do have as well. And maybe that's what it is. I'm not exactly sure, but, you know, I'll still look into it and hopefully try and figure something out. And then someone had to say something that is really funny. Sokolov said, welcome to the life of working for a living, LOL. Haha, that is so funny. I guess I would not understand because I've only been doing this for like 70 to 100 hours a week for 3 straight years, 7 days a week. And then at one point I was also doing college full-time on top of that with about, I think it was like 15 credit hours a week, and having to drive to college and everything like that in the middle of the day at like 8 in the morning, and then keep working until about 2 in the morning at 2 at night. I guess I wouldn't know. Like, it's like, to be entirely honest, like that was kind of a little bit of an annoying comment. I bet it was a joke, but it was kind of a little bit of an annoying comment because, to be entirely honest, at the start of the channel I was doing way more than I'm doing right now. Like, nowadays it's honestly a cakewalk compared to what I used to do, because back in the day I had to figure out how everything worked, which was not easy. So I was working about 100 hours a week most times, and then also going to college full-time on top of that. So I was literally being run ragged for the entire first year and a half of the channel's existence. And then law school was even worse. And now at this point, I have none of that going on in the background, and I just work on the channel, and I'm not feeling that great. So I know it's not, you know, oh, look at you, you're having to work. Yeah, look at your hands are soft. You know, it's not anything like that. It's probably that I am maybe I'm maybe sick or something. I don't know, but hopefully I'll find out. But anyways, with
Crazily enough, like I've found that actually cutting caffeine out is actually a really good thing. Like at first you realize, oh, I'm like really tired of not having caffeine like I used to, but having too much caffeine all the time like that, I think you eventually build up a tolerance to it, to where it doesn't really help you whatsoever, and then it starts just dragging you down because the caffeine is not only not helping you, but now it's running your body through the ringer as well. So then it causes you to feel sick on a regular basis. I've actually cut out caffeine quite a bit from my normal like day to day. Like when I wake up, rarely I will ever get a cup of coffee anymore. Like sometimes I'll get like a little thing of espresso at night, like tonight, but generally I find it's actually not that helpful anymore. Like I'm better off just like trying to slog through it without the coffee, because I found that coffee actually makes me feel a bit sick these days for some reason. I'm not sure why, but it's sort of like turned on me for some reason. So I don't know, like maybe if you cut back the Stoke and didn't do so much of it, you'd probably maybe feel better. At first it would be a little tough, but I think you'd grow into it.
Oh no, man, I would not. I tried that before for like 2 or 3 straight days, and I literally could not. I could never do that because the amount of concentration that I need to be able to monologue for about 2 straight hours of news is insane. Like it's an insanely high amount, and it's not easy to do. So
I'd
like,
imagine so.
yeah,
I personally just still don't understand how you do the monologue for that long. Like, obviously, I add bits and pieces in here and there, and I do the videos midday. But the 3 hours a night thing, I think that's what makes this channel so unique. Is nobody else can pull that off. And it's always been a mystery to me how you pull that off for 3 hours straight every single night. Because while we do have discussions from time to time, it's largely you just monologuing the entire time, which is a bit of a feat in itself. So I know everybody in the chat loves it. They're like, wow, that's a huge appeal of the channel. It's just like news, like nonstop for 3 hours a night, and it really is a good thing. But sadly, though, like I think like doing that too much and also mixing up tons of caffeine with it, it eventually will take you to this point, and then you either have to reset or cut back or something to get back right again.
yeah, I think so. But yeah, the monologuing thing was not really. It's never really been easy. Maybe it sounds easy when I do it, but monologuing has never really been that easy. Because back at the beginning of the channel, if y'all ever go and look at the first days of the war, there was no monologue. Like it was just me moving from clip to clip. And then as the war started to go on through the months, I finally started to get to where I was making a coherent storyline out of everything happening in the day, and then giving a lot of analysis and everything else in between. But then that started to require a lot of mental concentration and effort. And then also having Matthew on air, that adds a whole different thing to it, because I've got to think about 10 to 20 minutes ahead at a minimum on what I'm saying, like have a general framework and then fill it in as I go, fill in all the blanks in between the general like big bullet points that I'm doing. And then Matthew will butt in with a joke or something, which is great, but I also have to stop my monologue, shelve the next 10 to 15 minutes that I've constructed in my head, joke for a bit, and then get back on track and keep it going. Which maybe y'all can hear because I'll be joking with them and be like, anyways, getting back to the clip, because I'm trying to make sure that I stay on this track that I've like made in my head for the next 10 to 15 minutes. But that takes a lot of mental focus, and it's something that it is exhausting. It is actually like mentally and physically exhausting to do that. At least that's what it feels like when I'm doing it. And so to be able to get over that, I have to drink this absurd amount of coffee. Because at the beginning it was getting to where it was exhausting, and then everyone was like, why don't you drink coffee? And then coffee fixed the problem. Like I was not getting exhausted anymore because the coffee was allowing me to just truck on through it. And because I had enough energy from the coffee that I was hyped up enough, I could think about the mental track of where everything was heading, and then also make sure to joke and interact with Matthew in the chat and everyone else, and make sure that was really coherent sounding and really well put together. But it's a bit of a difficult thing. But nevertheless, that is how it's largely worked. Maybe that's the issue, is that it's just getting to be too much coffee these days. But maybe you're not. I don't know. We'll have to look into it a little bit more. But anyways, let's see. Too much caffeine and losing sleep. Light jogging helped me sleep. I tried that for a while, Monster Lab. I would go walking in 98-degree weather in the middle of the summer for an hour. And in the course of an hour, I would end up just walking. It was, I think, 2.5 miles or something like that. And in that kind of weather, that is insane. Like that's almost like getting a heat stroke. Like the shirt is soaked. Like the shirt may as well not even be there. Shirt is soaked from top to bottom. And then like that helped a little bit, but then by the end, when I just stopped doing that, I was exhausted. Like it made it even harder to run streams because I would get out of doing that, I would be exhausted completely, like absolutely. And then I'd try and drink the coffee, and then that just get me to where I was almost hanging on, and then I'd knock out 3-hour shows, and I was like, this cannot go on. And then I gave up doing that, which helped out a little bit. Like it's a bit of an issue. And also now some people are saying you need to stop drinking coffee. I'll see, but then I get freaking massive headaches. But I can quit anytime I want. I'm just kidding. But it gives me massive headaches. We'll see about it. But it's still it's probably not as cut and dry of an answer as it will be. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, Activista said, for perspective, at CNN, you'd have a producer per segment, researchers, etc., and you wonder why you're tired. Yeah, that's a good point. Like CNN, Fox, and all of them, they have a whole team of people behind the entire production. The guy speaking, like, for example, when it used to be Tucker Carlson, it's not really Tucker speaking, per se. It's more like his writer speaking. He's simply the narrator of the whole thing. And also, he has a light crew, a camera crew. He has people doing his hair and all this stuff. Maybe some makeup. You never know. All kinds of stuff going on. But here on the channel, it's just us two, and that's literally it. So it's just us. So that's probably maybe why we're a little extra tired. But you know what? We're glad to do it. We're glad to do it. We enjoy doing the stream outside of the occasional exhaustion here and there, and it's like what we're born to do out here. I'm telling you what, that sounds too cliche, but you know, y'all know what I mean. But anyways, moving on here to our next super chat. This one goes to Barry Woodward, who put in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Barry, for that support. He said, "It's not the dirt you stand on, it's the values you live for. LSA, USA, and freedom for the individual."
Hey, and thank you so much for your support, Barry Woodward. And I would agree with that completely. I would say it's not the dirt you stand on. It's not the value. It is the values you live for. Not the. It's not the other way around. Shame on me once. Look, you fool me once, you can't fool me again. But nevertheless, long live the Lee Spring Army. Long live the Republic. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because I agree with that wholeheartedly. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here, and also, Miss Diesel said it would be harder if you're on camera. Oh, yes, like we realized that when we did the 1 or 2 podcasts that we did, that puts a whole different type of mental strain on trying to keep the whole thing running. Because then you're thinking about, okay, how am I looking on the camera? Because no matter how you try to ignore that, you're always like slightly self-conscious about how you're looking. You don't want to catch yourself looking like a weird look on your face or something like that on the camera, because you'll be able to replay that for eternity and see that weird look on your face, and nobody really wants that. So, you know, unless you're Tucker Carlson, you have that confused dog look on your face. He likes to go back and look at that, I'm sure, quite often. But what were you about to say, Enforcer?
Let me add in the fourth dimension that made that even more difficult. There was no one behind the scenes when we did a live podcast that was switching the cameras around. I was doing that by hand while the show was live. So every time there was a camera switch in between person to person while we were talking or just doing anything else, I was having to do that while also monologuing for the entire time, which was like it was literally like fourth dimensionally difficult, in like fifth dimensionally difficult. That was so difficult, I could not do that long term. Like that's why we only did that rarely in very, very rare special instances, because one, the lights got hot, like even LEDs got hot, so we were like sweating after a while. Two, it was a lot of mental concentration work to monologue and also think about how I'm looking in front of a camera, just like Matthew. Three, it was also a lot of work because I was having to switch all of the cameras too, and also make sure that everything looked good on camera while I was trying to talk and look good myself on the camera. Like what's kind of crazy about this channel is that while others would have an entire production team to do these kinds of things, we do it with just Matthew and me. There's no one else behind the scenes that does any of this. And like when I think back about that, I'm like, that is actually insane that we even did that at all, Matthew, and I even was able to concentrate. I don't even really know how I did that, because switching cameras, and you were also like moderating chat and everything else too. I don't even know how we did that on air. I was also
trying to tie in those quote unquote guests as well, trying to get them on the Zoom calls and stuff to like basically tune them in, and that was a fun part of the show.
Yeah, not really.
No, I'm joking.
Because because we would be sitting there with all that stress and everything on us, and then we would, we brought on our first guest, which all of y'all know, and we brought him on, and we immediately got attitude from him, like before we even went live, and we were just like, oh, well, hopefully we can make it through 30 minutes. And then as soon as we got on air, they wanted to just be an ass off the bat while we were plugging their whole channel. And I was like, you know what? you know what? I was like, we're just going to try and make it through 30 minutes. We'll try and survive. And then the next guest got on, and then they talked about pig nipples in a cemetery and did that for 30 minutes. And did not help us out one bit. And I was like, okay, that's great. And then the third guest got on, and they were literally still wearing that little sleepy bedtime cap, you know, the one that has like the big fluffy ball on the end of it. And I was like, you know what? I think this was a bad idea all around, because it was like we put in all this work and effort and broke our backs in pre-production to get this whole show off the ground, to not even make a dime off of it, by the way. Like, we spent thousands of dollars on the set and the pre-production, and then all of this mental effort and everything, not to make a dime off of it, you know, to keep ourselves running as a channel. We did this for charity, and then all three of the guests that we lined up got on and just bombed. Like, it wasn't in a good way, it was a bad way. And I was like, why? Why do we?
But you know, it was worth it though, because I think that was one of our largest charity nights by far, like ever on the channel. That was like, I can't remember the charity. I think it was Doctors Without Borders, I believe.
Yeah, we raised like
I think it was like a
64 grand.
60,000. Yeah, it was like a $60,000 fundraiser on that one. So one of the largest ones we've ever had. So no, in my book, it was worth it. But the guests, honestly, were not worth it. That was probably the least exciting part of the show. But I remember we had like pre-prepared commercials like queued up and everything for like the segments. It was actually pretty good.
Yeah, well, it was incredibly good, you know, but still at the same time though, like the reason why I'm bringing up like the cost of everything and the amount of time and effort that we put into it is because we did all of that, and then the guests came on and acted like it was nothing. Like, either would just openly didn't like two of them I remember specifically didn't even want to talk to us really before the cameras were rolling. Like, when we've sent y'all to like our quote unquote ad breaks, where we had like neat little videos for y'all to watch and stuff while we were bringing guests on and off, like two of them just didn't even want to talk. Like, I'd be like, hey, how are you doing? Good. Okay. And it's like, you know, like, this is kind of like a big thing, you know. It's like, you know, and also, you don't have to be here. We kind of like invited you on. It'd be nice if you were polite, you know, at least talked a little bit, so that way when we went live, we had a good chemistry going and could talk about stuff pretty well, you know. But that didn't happen. And then someone got off air and started crying afterwards, and I was like, we didn't even treat them mean. I was like, what the hell went on? Like even after all
He
that,
treated me mean, man. He was treating me like terribly, like crap. The way he responded to me was like he was just like talking to a punk. And I just said, okay, I'll just let it go. I'm not going to say anything in response to that. I'll just let him get away with it. And then he got off and cried for 12 hours after the fact. I'm like, dude, like, don't get off here and cry after you just like punked me out alive on the air like that. It's like, what the hell? Dude, he reversed the roles. He became the victim.
What's even worse, dude, is that when we got him off air, I didn't say anything like, to hell with you, screw you, you asshole, yeah, I hope you rot. Like, nothing like that. I said, hey man, it was great having you on. Hopefully we can do something like this in the future. Although we knew at that point we didn't want anything to do with him again. And we were like, you know, we'll make sure to keep in touch, man. But it was great. And then we got him off air and brought on the next guest. And apparently with him just being an asshole to us, he was such an asshole he made himself cry or something. Like, I don't know. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, we do have a poll running. It says, what's the best news reporter face? 41% said the Tucker Carlson dog face, while 32% said the Wolf Blitzer mean face, and the 27% said the Jake Tapper sad face. So honestly, I would say out of all of them, the Tucker Carlson dog face is probably the most memorable of them all. Nobody will ever get confused while looking at a face like this right here. Whenever a guest was on his show, he would look like this, and no matter what they were saying, they could say, yeah, you know, Tucker, the sky is blue, and today it was raining, and you have this confused look on his face, like, you don't say. It's like, oh, geez, man. It's like, you put a different look on your face, please. But Enforcer, what say you?
Also, I have to say that whoever their hairstylist was, they were trying their damnedest. I don't know what they were really thinking, though, but I like to give them a big shout out for giving him the Lego hair from the new Lego figure hair, male classic brown dark.
From Leonard Hofstadter.
$1.50, pretty cheap. That's probably why they went with it. Fox was going through some budget cuts at that point. But let me go see if I can find the Jake Tapper sad face really quickly. The Jake Tapper sad face. Yeah, here we go. Like, dude, every time you type these in, they have an answer for it immediately. Look, there it is.
Oh, there he is, man, the pouty face. He's always got that look. I mean, Jake Tapper, I don't know if he's, like, what's going on with him or whatever, but, like, he always has that look on his face whenever a guest is on, like, he's just about to break down and cry. It's like, they're not always saying something sad. I mean, you can look like, you know, a little bit alive, you know.
Man, like, here's how he always talks, man. He's like, is there just even a chance? I mean, anything at all? You know, it's like with everything. It's like, it could be like, the U.S. government just found $5 trillion underground. It's a lottery. And he's like, I mean, like, is there any hope at all for us? I mean, are we cooked? You know, and he would go to that face. It's like, stop.
I mean, honestly, if he was like a character off of Winnie the Pooh, I think he would be Eeyore or something like that, like at this point, like the way he acts on the air.
And let me go find Wolf Blitzer's angry face. Yeah.
Did y'all see that time that Wolf Blitzer almost threw up on the air, by the way? That happened pretty recently, actually. Oh, there he is. Oh, my God, man. Like, he showed up. I will give him credit, though. He showed up to work sick, and he actually did, like, almost do this live on the air, but he made it off the air before it happened. But, oh, my God, that was a close one.
That was a close one. And I would have to say, out of the three of them, the Tucker Carlson dog face is probably the most memorable. None of these faces are that good, to be entirely honest, but still, you know, Tucker Carlson's is the most memorable. But anyways, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to, let's see here. This one goes to GunFox61, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, GunFox, for the day in history once again. He said, 1968, Apollo 8 was launched from Cape Kennedy, Cape Canaveral, and eventually completed 10 lunar orbits. 1989, the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin was reopened, signifying the reunification of East and West Germany, and also the 18th of June, 1983, STS-7 shuttle Challenger, first American woman in space, Sally Ride. Also, 12th of January 1986, flight of the U.S. Representative Bill Nelson, shuttle Columbia STS-61C, and 1988, Pan Am Flight 103 exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland. And question from the chat.
And I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And what an interesting day in history it is. You're very interested in space facts, GunFox61, and I appreciate that approach to the days in history, as American space exploration is truly a shining prestige of this republic. But nevertheless, Pan Am is also a very interesting one. I believe the Pan Am that exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland, had some sort of a Semtex explosive on board that was yellow in design and appeared to have been supplied to the, if I'm remembering the story correctly, the IRA by Gaddafi in Libya, if I'm remembering the story right of where that may have come from. But still, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, GunFox61. And before I forget, let us take that question from the live chat.
All right, so the question from the live chat in honor of GunFox61 goes to Bruce Lee, who said, any chance it was an elaborate false flag for Russia to justify further escalation?
No, it wasn't. Stuff like that's pretty straightforward. What you see is what you get. When the Russians bomb a Ukrainian building, it isn't the Ukrainians bombing their own, and when the Ukrainians do it to the Russians, it isn't the Russians bombing their own. It's the other side doing it. So that's what my take on that would be. I don't think it's been faked. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you once again for support, GunFox61, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Murdoch Masters, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Murdoch. They said, lurker here, since before the siege of Bakhmut. And you guys have been the true, long-lasting news the whole time. And keep up the great work and LSL the way. And remember to steer clear from that Chipotle. And I will steer clear from Chipotle. I'm telling you what, Chipotle scared me away the last time. I'm not messing with that again. Very, very rough. Chipotle is off the menu. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support, Murdoch Masters, and being an American like and throwing in your first super chat ever. And I gotta thank you for being here since before the siege of Bakhmut. That was a long time ago. That had to have been within the first week or two of the war. And I gotta say, thank you so much for enjoying that we've been long-lasting news, because we have been around for 1,000 or so days without end. I think the longest we've taken off air was that one time we went to California, which was about roughly 5 or 6 days off air. I think that's the longest time we've ever been off air since starting this channel, which is really wild to think about, because loads of other people out there act like being a YouTuber is wildly stressful and they take like a month off or something like that. We've only taken about a week in 3 years, and that's not bad. That's not bad when you think about it. Not a bad running record, not bad. But I do thank you so much for enjoying the channel, because we put a lot of work into what we do, because we know that a lot of y'all really appreciate what we do. It's not that we're well, I love what we do, but it's not that we're like obsessed with doing it. It's really more so that we put a lot of stock into y'all finding this news channel to be really important for what y'all get daily out of the news. So many of y'all say that this is really the only place y'all hear real news, and we want to make sure to get y'all the news out every single day, hell or high water. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Ballistics Computer, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Ballistics Computer, for that support. They said, don't mention the USS Liberty.
Oh, on that one, that one's brought up, and I've heard it before. Actually, I've heard that one before. It's usually a thing brought up against Israel because back in the day, Israel bombed a U.S. surveillance ship that was off the coast of Israel. It's actually off the coast of Sinai. And while it was flying a U.S. flag, the fighters did a low pass to see what kind of a ship it was, and then they ended up bombing it anyways. It's something that people always bring up. Generally, I'll be entirely honest with you here, not saying that you brought it up this way, but usually in a kind of an anti-Semitic way, not really against the state of Israel, but against a certain kind of a religious group. And to be entirely honest with you, I think that's really an injustice because the USS Liberty incident could be chalked up to a friendly fire incident, if any other is like that, and there are many like that. Hell, I mean, today a Super Hornet was shot down. I mean, what are we going to say? The captain of the USS Gettysburg, not a Protestant, a Baptist, knew that the pilot of that plane was a Pentecostal, so he shot the plane down. I mean, you could split hairs like that all day long and always say that there's some sort of a religious reason to do something like that. It was a mistake. It was a case of mistaken identity. It is what it is. A fairly sloppy case of mistaken identity, but a case of mistaken identity nonetheless. And so I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can in my opinion, because I always hear that one. Sometimes I wander around places on the internet looking around at what people say to kind of gauge where the ideological world's at this point, and I've seen that one a good bit in some places, and that one's just blatantly overrepresented and untrue, just like the Dresden bombing that a lot of people were bringing up earlier, which was the Dresden lie only came around in the early 2010s because some idiot on a podcast said, did you know that like America genocided Germans because they bombed Dresden and killed like 300,000 people in the city? And it's like, no, they didn't. And let's see, I'm gonna prove that really quickly. So Dresden, Germany, in the modern day, has a population of 585,000 people. So let's go back in time and look at the population number back in the day during World War II. So let's take a look. So here we go, their historical population figure. So if that many people were killed by 1944, which is when the bombing occurred, that means that over 60% of the city's population would have been killed in that bombing. And that is never represented in any of the numbers. Anywhere, like at all. Like this, like 1944 to 1945, these people died because the Soviet Union was busting down their door and killing them. Like that's why those people ended up dying in 1944 to 1945. These people did not die from a British-American bombing that killed 300,000 people. Simply did not happen. Just blatantly misrepresenting the facts. And that's something that people bring up nowadays to go, you see, Nazi Germany was good because, and it's like they weren't. And it's like you got to fabricate stuff to even make them sound like they're good. There was no Dresden bombing that happened that killed 300,000 people. What happened was that the Soviet Union arrived and killed a couple of 100,000 people. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Darren Quinn, who puts in the 10. And thank you very much, Darren, for that support as well. He said, North Korean train weapons and worms composting Ukraine.
Dang, composting SPGs? That's a different built worm right there. If they can compost a Koksan SPG, I'm honestly going to have to say I need those worms in my backyard because they need to help the plants grow, honestly. But still, I thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Monster Lab, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Monster Lab, for that support. He said, Have another Stoke brand coffee on me. And LSA. And whoa. He's my Monster Lab is fueling addiction out here. You gotta chill out, Monster Lab. But seriously though, thank you very much for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And I gotta thank you massively once again for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we would not be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Naru Ball, who puts in a 5 and says, my great uncle was a tail gunner in a Lancaster and got to watch Dresden something. I'm not sure. They blurred it out. It's kind of interesting. It haunted him for the rest of his life.
Dresden did burn, but once again, only 35,000 people died in the Dresden bombing, and that's the most liberal estimate given. Like, yes, it was not a great thing, but that's how mass bombing campaigns were done in World War II. That's the only way you could bomb anyone. Precision bombing did exist, but to get a single bomber in, a single bomber just would not survive. So you had to send in hundreds and carpet bomb a city to be able to hit strategic military targets. So with that in mind, yeah, that may have not been a great thing to see. I mean, me personally, it's not like, you're watching them cook alive, from 30,000 feet. You're just kind of watching the city burn below you as you fly off. And even then, by the time a tail gunner will be seeing the city burning, they're about 20 miles away. So for anyone to see anyone burning on the ground in Dresden, I mean, that'd be kind of a little tough. I mean, hell, really, to be entirely honest, drone operators would see more just getting a squad of Russians than a tail gunner in a Lancaster would, or a B-17 for that matter. That's really why, like, the folks who flew the Enola Gay and boxcar and dropped the atomic bombs in Japan, I mean, they sleep pretty soundly. I mean, they didn't see squat. They were so far away and so high up when the bomb went off, they didn't see anything but a mushroom cloud. But beyond that, the Lancaster is a pretty cool plane. I mean, it's a pretty impressive one, no doubt. It was the British version of a strategic bomber in World War II. Really their best one, like, no doubt about it. But still a pretty impressive plane nonetheless. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can, in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Neil Visinot, who puts in a 5 and says, don't forget, when the F-18 went down, there was an AWACS in the air, so what the F? Isn't that supposed to help air control?
That is supposed to help air control. That's why I think that there was some sort of a misidentification of the aircraft due to the shipborne radars, which may have not even been on. They may have been working with the AWACS to identify the aircraft, and that may even complicate the situation even further. And so with that, I thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Leora Abigail, who puts in the 5. And thank you very much, Leora, for I believe, the second support of the night.
Hey!
They said, I just watched the Family Guy, Pat Tillman skit, LMFAO.
Yeah, it's a pretty funny one. Like, I even find it funny, and Family Guy is only funny in small doses. But that was a really funny one. It was. Another funny one was, let's see. Like there was like a tipping thing, Matthew, from a modern episode, and it was like, do you want to tip a coffee to a soldier overseas? And Lewis said yes, and this guy was trying to defuse a bomb, and someone off in the distance yelled, hey buddy, you just got a coffee from some woman in Rhode Island, and he threw it at the guy, and it fell on the bomb, and it blew up, like with the guy still trying to defuse it. Like, it was a hilarious it was a hilarious segment, though. It was pretty funny. But still, I gotta thank you so much for your support, Leora, and looking at that skit, because it was a good one. It was a pretty funny one. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Ghostmorn, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Ghostmorn, for that very generous support as well. They said, thanks for everything you guys do.
And I thank you so much for the support, Ghostmorn, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it rolling. And I got to thank you massively for that, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to I Don't Play Games, 3K, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, I Don't Play Games, for that support. They said, hi, I'm growing into a fan. Thank you. They said, what's your thoughts on this missile that Putin claimed can travel at low altitude, which inevitably can't be intercepted?
Listen, I don't play games. You're either a fan or you're not. I'm just playing.
Whoa.
I had to make a pun on their name. It's just a prank. It's just a prank. But
Just a prank, bro. It's just a prank.
It's just a prank, bro. Don't shoot me. But beyond that, thank you so much for giving support and helping this channel to keep on running. And to answer your question, I have not heard about that particular missile. Most missiles actually fly pretty low to the ground these days, just as a fact of life. I believe you may be talking about the maybe the Kinzel? But the Kinzel pretty much is like any other missile. It just flies at a incredibly high speed though, and not that high above the ground. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, because beyond that, I wouldn't know the specific missile of which you speak. But still, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Octavian Timisoaranu, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Octavian, for that support. He said, I think it's okay to be proud of your ancestry or heritage, as long as you don't make it your entire identity, which some people tend to do after DNA tests.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like that, you're pretty much saying the same thing I'm saying, just in a slightly different way. Like, if you're Irish, great. Don't make it your whole thing. Like that's the thing to me. Like it's totally fine to be proud of being a Norwegian or a Swede, but at the same time though, like the historic side of me is like, you gotta kind of make it about who your family was when they stopped being that nationality. So for my side of the Swedish things, I never even look at Vikings or anything like that. I just look at Swedish beggars from the 1800s, and I think about Sweden and what it looked like in the 1800s. I'm like, that's what my family was. When I think about the British side, I think about them coming over in the 1700s, because that was when they stopped being British and they started to become Americans. That's how I look at it. It's like really cool that those are the people who make up my story. I really need to think that I have a historical connection in some way to the history of those countries up to that point. But at the same time, I don't really carve it out to be my personality, because where I was born, there was no Britain, there was no Sweden, it was just Alabama. And Alabama's all I've known. It took me a long time to figure out that I'm not just an Alabamian. I'm a bit Scandinavian and mostly British, but at the same time, that doesn't really change much for me. I'm still an Alabamian living in Alabama right now and an American citizen. And I just don't really want to morph it into my entire life. Like, I'm not going to go get like a tattoo of some sort of like Norse symbol, or sit there and start saying that I'm from like Limerick in Ireland or something like that. It's like it's just not who I am. I'm just I'm the enforcer. I'm from Alabama. I'm an American. Those people are people I don't even know. Like I don't like none of my family that I've ever known has a foreign accent, a Swedish accent or a British accent. So for me, it's like, as far as I'm concerned, my family is American. Like, cool to know that they historically came from another place, but they're American true and true. They've been here for hundreds of years. And that's why, I just don't like it, because everyone else in America is mostly just like me. Like, there's not really a lot of exceptions to that. Most people have been here for generations, and they were grown up in a place like Kentucky. I personally find it a lot better, to me, for people to obsess over their actual recent historical connection. Like, my family were coal miners in the Appalachian Mountains in West Virginia, or the state of Virginia, or Tennessee and Kentucky. It's like, that is something I really do appreciate, because that's truly what they are. Like, that's what these folks are. That's what they come from. They come from coal miners. They come from steel workers or farmers or something along those lines here in the United States. But trying to drag everything back to 1,000 years ago, and especially trying to get into the whole warrior fighting thing, like that, it just comes off as cringe to me. And also another thing is, like, fighting is something that we talk about a lot on this channel. We cover war an endless amount, but it's not something that you really like. It's the only thing that you can pride yourself on in life. And also, a lot of those people who do that, they, like, at least in my personal experience of running into them, they're people who really do not excel at fighting, or wouldn't really make it fighting, and so then they attach themselves to this lineage to make themselves seem a lot cooler like that, and it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's like, I don't like that. It comes off as cringe to me, and it's really trying too hard. It's like, if you're like a badass slugger, like Mike Tyson used to be, it's like, then you're a badass slugger. You could get in the ring and beat the hell out of someone. But if you're just someone like me, I'm not going to be winning any prize fights or anything like that. I'm no fighter. I'm no warrior. I just happen to believe in what this nation does, and I support it wholeheartedly, and I support the folks who go out and do that kind of a thing. But as far as I am, I'm just me. It's like, I'm not not a Viking. I'm not a British mercenary that came to the Georgia colony. I'm none of those people. I'm who I am. I'm an American citizen. My folks, back in the day, well, back in the day that I can measure, some of them were in the military. A lot of them were in the military. A lot of them ended up fighting or dying in World War II, at least on my mom's side. On my dad's side, they were trashmen and taxi drivers, and that's who they are. I mean, they were just random American people, normal working Joes out there. Nothing crazy, nothing too fantastic. They just did what they did, and that's who I am in a large sense. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one is going to go to Plazat, who puts in a 4. And thank you very much, Plazat, for that $4 support. I do not see a comment attached to it, so sadly, nothing to address. But once again, big thank you to you once again for that support. And we also have a 2 from Neil Vizanon, who said, also, I forgot, what is the LSA flag made of?
Polyester, mostly, and I think a little bit of cotton. Is that what it's asking, Matthew? Because I think that's what it's asking.
I wouldn't want to say right off the bat because honestly I don't recall exactly what the proportions were, but I believe it was primarily polyester, but I'd have to go back and double check. I don't want to say for certain without knowing.
I think it's mostly polyester, if not entirely polyester, if I remember correctly, and a very thick one. It's actually 2-ply, so each side of the flag is a different flags, and they were both sewn together. So they're pretty durable. We made them extremely durable, so hopefully it hasn't ripped apart or anything like that, because it was supposed to be able to survive a good bit of punishment. But even still, the flags really weren't made to be flown outside because the autograph on it is with a Sharpie, a golden Sharpie, and after a while the flag will bleach, and that autograph is going to bleach a lot quicker than the flag's dye will. So it's more so for collecting and kind of just stowing away somewhere and not really flying outside, because if you fly it outside, you are guaranteeing, really, especially after about a month or two, that autograph's going to disappear and will not be on that flag anymore. So if you want to keep the autograph, because we're probably not going to do a release where it's autographed again, and if we do, there's probably going to be a additional charge for that, so that way we can limit the amount of flags I'm having to autograph. You might want to preserve those flags fairly well. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Alexi, who puts in a 2 and says, here's $2. You are now royal.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And Matthew, remember that giant scam thing that happened on YouTube that was a big deal about that you could buy land in Scotland and be called a lord, and that's not how it actually legally works? And I remember listening to that dude, and I was like, that's not true at all, because that means that everyone living in Scotland now is probably a lord or a lady. It's that doesn't even make any sense. It's where's their representation in the House of Lords then, if that's the case? That was the goofiest one. I don't even know why people actually believed when they were taking on that sponsor that was a real one, because it's that just sounds bogus in the first place. It's here in America, it's when you buy property, you don't get called congressman when you own property. It's that's not how it works. It's that's just crazy. But anyways, with that, I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, also, Matthew, I don't know if you see this, but I'm sorry, Tommy Storm Eagle. We run the show. We pace it pretty well. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else, or you can stay here. And it looks like Matthew gave you the option to go somewhere else. So bye to you, and I hope you have a great time on another channel. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Dupper Bob, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Dupper, for that support. He said very simply, Slava Ukraine. And Dupper, I say to you, Herom Slava. And thank you very much once again for that support. But with that, folks, guess what? It is now time to move into our live chat segment here, because that is our last super chat of the stream. And once again, huge shout out to everybody tonight that's donated to the channel and helping to keep us running. And if you want to, smack the like button as well, because that is a humongous help also to help get the news out there. But once again, we're now moving on to our live chat questions. And our first one here is going to go to AF Kaplan, who said, if there are more incidents like the one today in Kazan, could this adversely affect Ukraine getting aid from the West?
I'll be entirely honest, it probably will not, because strategic interests are strategic interests. The Israelis ended up having a decent amount of collateral casualties in the Gaza Strip, and it has not changed the amount of support we give to the Israelis a single iota, largely because strategic interests largely outplay those sorts of things in the long run. Still not great, and I think there should be a major campaign to mitigate these kinds of things, both by the Israelis and the Ukrainians, but at the end of the day, it probably will not affect support that much, because we still want to win, even if they ended up doing things that would amount to some form of terrorism. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in a realistic kind of an answer. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Judy from the live chat, who said, if Putin would die, do you think the war would end? And what are your thoughts on that?
If Putin would die, would the war end? It really depends on who would take over Russia. If it was Medvedev, we think the war would go on a pretty good while. But if there was some random underling from a government bureaucracy that climbed the ladder in the power struggle and took control of Russia, the war might end, because they would be trying to show that they are different than the last government and therefore more legitimate. That would probably be the case. But it's really hard to say. It really depends on those kinds of situations, who actually takes over control of the country. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And also, before we move on, Philip A. Dimmick said, Enforcer, is tomorrow night the last stream until after Christmas? And Merry Christmas. And Merry Christmas to you, Philip. And yes, it is. It is the last stream before Christmas, because we have Mondays off, and we also have Christmas Eve and Christmas Day off. So Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we're not going to be on air. We're going to be just kind of taking it easy. And also, I'm going to be plugging up the brand new computer, so that way hopefully when we come back on air, lag will be a thing of the past once and for all. So that's what we're largely going to be doing. So yes, tomorrow will be our last day on air until Thursday of this upcoming week. And so with that, I hope that it answers that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next question here. This one goes to Catsin of Wrath, who says, this is my biggest question right now. Will Russia use nukes if they are completely cornered?
Yes, if they are completely cornered, as in they are about to lose unconditionally, they will fire nuclear weapons. That's what the nuclear weapons really are for. It is a strategic deterrent to stop a country from invading you and attempting to capitulate you into an unconditional surrender. That's really what everyone maintains nuclear weapons for. That's why China has nuclear weapons, because their arsenal is actually far smaller than others, and that's specifically because the Chinese arsenal is mostly strategic. There's hardly any tactical nuclear weapons that the Chinese own. Almost all of them are intercontinental strategic missiles, and that's just for the fact that it's supposed to protect them as a strategic deterrent from stopping someone from going to war with China, with the idea of capitulating them and forcing them into an unconditional surrender. Those nuclear weapons, at least historically, were actually aimed at the Soviet Union, but nowadays they're probably equally aimed towards the Russian Federation, although probably a lot less so as each year passes, and more towards the United States, as we are now their main rival on the world stage. But with that, I hope that answers that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to, let's see here, Knox Date, who said, since 2024 is coming to an end from the both of you, what could you think will be in store for us as in the war between Russia, and will it get worse and spread globally?
I would doubt that it would spread globally. I do believe that the incoming administration is going to take a much stronger approach to the Russian Federation, to be entirely honest with you all. But I do believe that there will also be a serious consideration made to mitigate the conflict and contain it inside of Ukraine and not have it spread globally. We'll probably also be taking a very strong stance against the Chinese and the Iranians as well. So I generally believe that these areas of the world will be held down and it will not spread into a global world war. However, the Ukraine war will certainly heat up a good bit extra, and we'll probably see that peace negotiations are seriously being considered towards the end of 2025. But that's generally the best crystal ball that I give. Any more detail than that, it is going to bound to be wrong in practically every single way. But with that, I hope that does answer that well.
I would also say that I think the war will stay contained as well within Ukraine. The big question right now is, how is support going to continue to Ukraine? Because obviously the incoming administration has committed to sending aid to Ukraine in the future. We don't know if it's the same amount of aid, or if it's going to be reduced, or if it's going to be increased. We don't know. But also, negotiations are still on the table. So if Russia goes into the negotiations with this like preconceived notion they're going to start telling everybody how it's going to be, those negotiations are going to fall apart pretty quick. And I think after that, we'll probably see support get ramped up tremendously to Ukraine. That'll probably be the response to it. And from that point forward, that's going to put Russia in a bit of a corner. So Russia will either resort to its own means to defend itself, or it'll try to basically bring in some allies and some help, maybe some more help from North Korea, and maybe try to get help from China even more so to try to basically get out of the corner that they've been backed into at that point. So that's personally where I think it's going. And from there, it's impossible to say exactly how it's going to end, but it could get nasty or might not. Only time will tell.
I think, adding on to that, Matthew, I think that Nixon's strategy of peace through strength is most likely what's going to be attempted here in the next year, is by ramping everything up in the war on the Western side to 10 without, of course, turning it into a world war, to get the Russians to take peace negotiations seriously, because at that rate, with how the war would be going at that point, they wouldn't be able to last that long. Because one thing that is very clear at this point is that Ukraine is not going to be given up to be carved up by the Russians, with the West just standing idly by and watching. That's now been made very clear, so we know that that's going to be the case. The first round of peace negotiations are going to be attempted in the early part of this year, this upcoming one, and they are going to fail immediately. The U.S. and Europe is going to go back to ramping up support for Ukraine 100%. Even more than 100%, and we'll probably see that it will be enough, and there will be enough allowances given to Ukraine, that the Russians will see that there really is no way to get everything that they want out of Ukraine, and so then they'll go to the negotiating table, and we'll give up some stuff to them, but we will largely assure that we get most of what we were looking for in Ukraine, and there will be a decent compromise made. It won't be perfect, but it'll still be a lot better than the alternative of getting into a nuclear war due to the breakdown of diplomatic relations and the beginning of a world war. So that's largely what I'd expect. I think the Chinese will probably stay out of it, much like they have been so far. I don't think the Chinese are really wanting to really chomp at the bits to get involved in this. And I really do think that the model example that I gave last night, to where the Chinese actually are probably banking on a Russian economic collapse so that way they can rebuild their economy and also get all the benefits of doing that, is probably still the Chinese plan at large. Because the Chinese always want to make sure they never want anyone who's even semi-autonomous. They want countries that are pretty much bound to China at the hip. That's how they work on a foreign diplomacy level. And by allowing the Russians to economically collapse even post-war, it allows for the Chinese to come in and rebuild the Russian economy from the ground up, ensuring that Russia is bound to the Chinese at the hip well on into the future, and they will never have the autonomy that they even have right now. Which is even limited at this point due to the massive trade relations that they have with the Chinese. But anyways, I hope that addresses that well, at least in my vision of what I think the future will look like in that regard. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Bob, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Bob, for that $2 support. He said, what's the U.S. Pine Gap base for in Australia? What base? What's Pine Gap? Where's that at? I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, Pine Gap.
What is that?
Pine Gap?
I'm sorry, I'm receiving a phone call. I just got notified that we've never heard of Pine Gap. Where is that? Oh my God, what is that?
We've never heard of this place. It does not exist.
Wait a minute. Zoom back in. Zoom in one. I just realized they messed up with OPSEC a little bit. They named the road Track.
It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that road in North Korea called Gulag Service Road.
Yeah, it's a Gulag Service Road. Yeah. Just when you're coming into the building, take Gulag Service Road and make a left onto Torture Street. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Make a right onto Putin Street. Excuse me. Window Street. Oh, my bad.
Man, they got a lot of shipping containers out there. Actually, this place is, like, you can practically see anything you want. They have some shipping containers. Looks like some vehicles. I'm assuming a bulldozer down here. It looks like a Caterpillar D10, maybe. They also have some sort of a front loader excavator of some sort, maybe. An interesting facility here. It looks like they have a large amount of air conditioning or cooling units connected to the building.
You know why? Do you know why?
I think you know the answer. Well, you know the answer. It's just that I can't think of the exact answer right now. So what is it, Matthew? What's it for?
Because this is my speculation, folks. I know nothing for a certainty. There's probably a large data center here because a large part of Pine Gap's abilities are mainly in signals intelligence, and they're probably having to store a lot of data and also interpret a lot of data, and that takes quite a big computing power. And what do you need when you have to have a ton of computers and servers? You need a lot of cooling, and it's probably what that's for.
Probably so. I'd also assume because of its location kind of on its own, that's probably the case. So that way they can kind of create a little security perimeter around the building due to probably how expensive the equipment is inside of it. But let's see here. There's the dorms, or the barracks more so. Most likely dorms, not barracks. And they also have some sort of a loading facility down here. Now, where would the DFAC be for these people? Probably here in one of these buildings, I'd assume, because there's the swimming pool. So yeah, and also the tennis courts right here. So this would definitely be the DFAC somewhere within this building right here, where the mouse cursor, or down here, one or the other. Don't know what these buildings are for. These look actually more like vehicle sheds, so that way they're not boiling in the middle of the sun all day. That's probably what those are. And let's see here. Where's the? They have some sort of a relay out here. I don't know what that one's for. I don't know what any of this is for, to be entirely honest. But still a pretty interesting little facility for sure. Unfortunately, I don't know the exact answer as to what this thing is. I've heard that it is involved in satellite communications, where spy ships can't detect the transmissions because it's in the middle of Australia and it's out of their reach, and they can never get close enough to the Australian coast to be able to pick up the transmissions. But I've also heard some other things as well that Matthew's included. I believe including some electronic geolocation stuff that this facility does. It's a pretty impressive facility. It's just that, of course, a lot is not known for the public because it's a matter of national security. But anyways, I hope that does address that the best I can. And also someone said they spray paint the grass, and you would think they would, but this is probably actually real grass. The military has this thing, like this weird obsession with just having grass somewhere. Like they have to have grass. I guess that's why when officers get out of the military, Matthew, and they're retired, they become obsessed with maintaining lawns at their houses. It's because the military got this obsession of grass in them.
It's good for the mind, grass. You can walk outside in the grass. You can feel grass. You can touch grass. When you're going crazy, they tell you to go touch grass.
Yeah, they do. They also tell that to chronically online people, too. They always say, touch grass. And, most people don't. I don't included. Because the grass we have, it's plastic. But anyways, with that...
I went outside and touched grass, and it didn't help one bit.
Man, I went outside one time, and it was cold. It was cold. It's like 30 degrees outside. It's cold. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
So our next one here goes to Catzilla, who says, will Russia resort to more desperate measures as their economy collapses?
Yes, usually that would really propel them into taking more desperate measures, and they're really doing a lot of them right now. Oreshnik strikes on Ukraine, bringing North Koreans in, conducting endless offensives everywhere, just praying for a breakthrough. I mean, they're really at the point of desperation right now. So I would say yes, they will act more desperate as they get worse off economically. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
All right, and this one is going to go to Philip Bank. And Philip said, great effort, both of you, and thank you very much, Philip, for the kind words. He says, question, I am a Dane working for Finland and married to a Finn. Oh, married to a Finn, wow. Very nice. And public has been cut off to info reg. Let's see here, let's see. I think he was trying to say the public's been cut off of info regarding the recent cable cuts in the Baltic Sea, and why is that being kept secret?
Generally because I actually couldn't explain that. I was going to give an answer, and then I started thinking, well, there's really no reason to hide that. I couldn't tell you, to be entirely honest. I hate to tell you that. I would not know off the top of my head. It may be that they're trying to avoid a major diplomatic incident, so they just don't want the public to know, so that way they don't get outraged to where it does create a diplomatic incident. That is most likely the case, because they did seize the Yuping vessel, which had nothing but Russians on board, so it may have been a Chinese-Russian affair that would create a major diplomatic spat with the Chinese and the Russians, if the public knew. So that may be why they're keeping it secret. That could really be the only explanation I could give, and even still, I feel like that's a bit of a stretch, but might be the case. Anyways,
honestly though, I think it's probably a simpler explanation than that. It was an info cable that got cut, so you can't get any more info because the cable got cut.
You know what? Matthew's on the fifth dimension right there. That's like next level thinking,
yeah.
Honestly. That's pretty impressive.
Look at that.
Man, allow me to do the what we call the stall. So basically, we were in this cemetery, and someone said, "I have pig nipples," and then someone fired a machine gun, and the bullets were spraying so violently. I'm just gonna start doing that, man, for like 30
Man,
minutes. That's
please
like,
don't do that. Like that's like it's like nails on a chalkboard, like almost.
and it's going to be the slowest, most unenergetic monologue y'all have ever seen. Period. But with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, and this one goes to Quantum Fighter, who said, "Who will be the president of South Korea now?" I think the current guy's still there, by the way. I don't think he's actually resigned yet. He said he was going to, but I don't think he has.
He said, "I'm going to do it," and never did it. He never actually resigned. I don't know who the next president's going to be. I believe that there will be some sort of a snap election held, maybe. I don't know how South Korean election laws work, though, so it may be a different thing. It may be that the same party that has the majority right now just puts a president in place. I'm not really sure. So I'll be waiting to see how that happens along with you, because I'm not really that versed on South Korean election law. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Connor Guaratafiero, who said, "Did you hear about the Chinese satellite that burned up over Louisiana?" And yes, we did actually. That happened about 30 minutes ago. Apparently, a Chinese satellite burned up over Louisiana. The Southerners saw it. They didn't have the chance to shoot at it. They did not do that, thankfully. But it was visible across the region, and you could see it going across Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, and it burned up. Apparently, we're being told now it was a Chinese satellite of some sort. Let me see if I can get some more info here real quick. Let's see here. Oh, looks like some Alabamians got to see it too, but not us. Let's see. So apparently, it was a commercial imaging satellite operated by Beijing-based Spaceview, and it re-entered above New Orleans at 10:08 p.m., heading northbound towards Mississippi, Arkansas, and Missouri, and was widely observed, according to the reports. So apparently, that was all it was.
卫星放小小，微风说往心花。Man, I'm telling you what, like those Huawei satellites, they really are hitting different these days. But beyond that, it was just simply the Chinese burning up a satellite over our own country. Nothing to worry about, folks. Nothing to worry about. No reason to be concerned. Really, though, like no joke, there is no reason to be concerned. It got evaporated in the atmosphere, so there will be no concern at all about that. But beyond that, I hope that answers that last question of the night incredibly well. And it's now time for us to round out tonight's stream. I've got to thank everyone for watching tonight. All 10,200 of y'all that were here at the peak, and the 5,200 people who are still here right now. 95,000 people have watched this stream since it started, and we're always honored and incredibly appreciative and grateful to be y'all's primary source of news. And of course, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time for the last live stream we will be running before we take off for Christmas. We'll be back on December 26th at 10 p.m. Eastern Time after tomorrow night, but make sure to join us for a last Sunday night fundraiser before we go away for a couple of days for the Christmas break. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, long live the Lee Spring Army, and Slava Ukraini, the Lee Spring Army will never die.
And oh, it's that time of the night to say goodnight it is. I almost fell asleep there for a second. Not really, though. I'm just joking. I was looking at the live chat. But anyways, folks, thank you all once again for another great stream tonight. And we appreciate you all being here. 95,000 people showed up before the stream ending tonight, which is insane. That's almost 100,000 people. And we're glad all of you were here tonight. And also smash the like button on the way out and destroy the like button. And with that, folks, Slava Ukraine. Heroam Slava. Get some rest, and we'll see you all at 10 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night for the Sunday night fundraiser stream, where we raise a ton of money right before Christmas to help out those Ukrainian civilians yet again. And with that, folks, good night.
Yes.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Повстань